You want to get dirty clothes on your bed?
Yes. Take that cat talk.
Okay, with it being after 7 o'clock, we'll call the April 13th meeting to order, and we'll start off with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
That's the way it's.
Mr. Chairman, if you don't mind, I'd like to acknowledge
No.
and recognize
I just wanna make sure
the
you
fact
know.
that Paul Terrio, a former member of this commission for between 8 and 10 years, I forget exactly, passed away a week and a half ago. He was a good guy. I sat, when I first joined this commission with Paul, he was an attorney who was skilled and wrote every single decision back in the day. I'd just like to acknowledge the passing and maybe offer a moment of silence.
Duly noted. Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. All right,
Before we start, I just want to make sure that the people that are tuning in with us can hear us. If maybe one of you could unmute and let us know.
Yes, hi, this is Steve Boyko. I can hear you just fine.
Great, thank you.
Thanks,
Okay,
Amy.
great.
okay, we'll start off with the approval of minutes for March 23rd.
We do not have minutes ready for you for review, so that'll be
Okay.
next meeting.
Very good. We have one continuance on NOIs, 242-1837, 1260 Salem Street. Requested continue to April 27th.
So move. Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that's unanimous. Okay, first order of business is 242-1822, 45 Katuitt Street.
Okay.
Good evening, Ben Osgood, Ranger Engineering Group, here for 45 Katuitt Street. We were here a while back, and the commission gave us some, a list of items that they wanted to see as part of this filing. And my letter, April 1st, outlines what we have submitted to the commission. I think number one, they wanted to see that the property, we actually had a right to develop the property and to access the property over the streets and ways, that the property actually didn't require a subdivision. So we've submitted the Form A plan that was approved by the planning board, I believe in 1984. So it was submitted and approved, and the roadway existed in its configuration that was there at that time. Number two, we submitted a deed from the original conveyance from the people who developed the subdivision, and it conveyed the ability to pass over the rights-of-way in the subdivision, all the streets in the subdivision, and it's in common with the adjacent owners of all the different parcels of the land. We previously received a letter from the Public Works stating that the driveway is acceptable and it meets their requirements. We did a test pit right adjacent to where the crossing is going to be, and we had excavated to a depth of 8 feet with no refusal. For that reason, we've gone back to doing a horizontal drill to cross the brook to eliminate any disturbance to the brook bed and to the bank. We've clarified the wetland crossing details. We have a culvert, a box culvert, aluminum box culvert. We've supplied an isometric so you can see what the size of the culvert, how the head walls work. It's a pre-constructed aluminum culvert. They pour the concrete footings on each side of the crossing, and they construct the culvert on the concrete footings without disturbing the stream bed. And actually, since the last meeting, Amy brought up the fact that we did not have the bank delineated with flags. I had actually located the bank with measurements from existing wetlands flags. So a couple weeks ago, we went back out, I met Amy, we met delineated the bank. She looked at where we delineated the bank, and we surveyed it with an actual site survey. This time of year, it's amazing when the vegetation is gone and the bittersweet has lost all its leaves. We were able to locate the culvert under the little cart path that is there within Layden Street. We more closely delineated the actual stream channel, and we actually found within the wetland limits an old foundation for a shed. It's basically pressured wood boards with some crusher waste, the remnants of the shed, a lawnmower. It's all within the wetlands, so we've added removing that and revegetating that portion of the wetlands to the site plan. And then the last thing we did was we clarified the construction sequence. So we detailed how we're going to sequence the construction. So that sheet there, the first part of the construction will establish the erosion control with just minimal cutting by hand. We'll clear once the erosion control is in, they'll clear the trees, and the clearing will be done by hand. It's really not a large area, and it won't take too much effort. It's mainly the bittersweet vines and shrubs and a couple of small trees. And they'll place the wood mats over the wetland so that they can cross and construct the replacement area, which is in the top right. So they can put the mats down, cross with the backhoe, build the replacement area. Then they can install the footings, remove the wetland material, and put it into the replacement area without having to track back and forth through the stream bed. It will preserve the stream bed. The mats will span the area. Once the footings are in, the culvert can be constructed, and then they can backfill the culvert and continue with the work without having to disturb the wetlands once the culvert and the head wall is in and the area is backfilled. I believe that is the extent of the information the commission was looking for. Be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Joe?
Couple of questions of things we requested specifically, and maybe one question regarding an abutter concern raised during that site walk in the fall. And I guess the question with the planning board decision, which I agree with, I understand and agree with, of the rights to be able to access it, coupled against the Public Works Department's suggestion that the driveway is adequate access. I guess my question is that this particular lot has no frontage on an improved way. That was what I was trying to get to back 6 months ago or so. Is there any requirement, or should there be a requirement, to actually improve the roadway in order to have an improved access along an improved way in order to gain access to the approved lot? Because right now, what we have is a roadway that cuts to the northwest and totally misses the entire frontage of your lot, meaning your entire frontage of the lot has legal frontage, but no improved frontage on either Leiden or Katuitt. And that question, I think, hasn't been asked or answered. So that's what I was asking back then. Granted, the driveway may be adequate, but I think from a planning and a land development perspective, I think access along an improved way is what's required. And I don't think you have it here. And the reason why I asked that question is putting it into the context of conservation is that whole wet meadow question gets affected by that, the answer to that question. If you're required to do something to improve the roadway itself along your legal frontage, you are then more encroaching into the wet meadow, and therefore we have a different discussion. I don't think that specific question has been asked or answered.
So, I mean, I
read your letter to
Right.
to Public Works, and I read their answer back, but I don't think I got right down to the actual question of what is the requirement of building on a pre-existing non-conforming lot that has legal, authority and legal acceptance for access. But usually it is that you access it from the improvement in that way in front of your house, meaning it has to be built somewhat. But right now, what you're proposing is simply a driveway bifurcating right across it and not improving any of it. So that's the question I had.
So if you look at that plan that's right up on the screen there,
That's what I'm looking at here.
and you draw a line perpendicular with our frontage to Katuitt Street, I mean, more than half of our frontage has a road in front of it. It is a little unconventional. It's not right there 10 feet away from the frontage, but I can point to you many places in North Andover where the roadway, Dale Street, for example, used to wind around, and now it's straight, and there are places where people's actual frontage are 45, 50, 60 feet away from the actual pavement. And it's just not it's an unusual condition, but the roadway is still there. It's just a little further away than we're used to. In my opinion, this roadway was constructed, and it shows on that Form A plan, and they approved that Form A plan for this lot, and that was approving their access. Now, the planning board said, well, we don't have a new application, we're not gonna act and try to determine what they did back when they approved it, so we're not gonna render any sort of opinion. But my assertion is that the record stands on its own, that they filed a Form A plan, they were allowed to have a Form A lot, and the road existed as it did at the time.
This
And
lot-
so it's an approval.
This lot's existence way predates the Form A plan.
The Form A plan actually created this lot out of two smaller lots.
To consolidate.
To consolidate
them.
Right, the lots, when they were created, were all approximately 5,000 square feet, 50 by 200, or, 10,000 square feet, whatever. And they took a bunch of lots, let's say 20 lots, and they created 10 that had the proper frontage and area that fit the zoning at the time the Form A plan was done. But the road had been constructed.
All right, so rather than going around and around, your position is Form A lot gives you legal existence.
Right.
The DPW's letter back is what it is, the standard they're holding you to, and that driveway is adequate.
Right.
And if we would approve it accordingly, and if something were to come up, it simply requires modification or, an
Right.
amendment to the order.
It's actually, I understand your concern that it's is it allowable to do it or not? But I think it's somewhat out of your jurisdiction, and we'll take the chance that if somebody, I know.
And again, I only pull it back that if they require you to, it's a greater impact to the wet meadow.
I understand.
That's the only
I
issue
understand.
that I have.
Right. And I think in reality, if somebody challenged it, and we would actually go in and just ask for a waiver of all the subdivision regulations and allow to access it with a driveway. That's,
Limited projects work on the state regulations, but not necessarily on our bylaw.
yeah.
Okay, that's that. So the other thing that came out of the the site walk, were two trees, as shown on your plan. One, I think is unavoidable, it's over the house. And the other one is
Yep.
out on the hammerhead turnaround.
Right.
And that's, as it abuts the property. Clearly, they're on your property, they're jurisdictional within the 100 feet, but not anywhere within the no disturb.
Right.
But if there was a way to save those trees, it would provide a better visual buffer to the abutting property.
Right.
So I think it's fair game where it was brought up at the site walk, whether you got a chance to think of that. So the ones I'm looking at, they're not so much numbered, other than there's one adjacent to what's shown as elevation 94.9, and another one that says remove tree just below the word fence.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the two that I think are worthy of discussion. I think the others you're saving.
Right. So, in order to develop the property, number one, the one that's closest to the north side of the house, they're really not gonna be able to construct the house without, they'd have to shave it up one side, and they're better off to just take it down and plant a new tree. The other one, we have a retaining wall, in order to make the grading work with the driveway. And again, the roots are gonna be shaved down, and we're better off to take it down and plant new trees. And the applicant has no problem, replacing those trees. If that wants to be a condition, we'll agree to replace those trees with, obviously, they can be, a maple tree, which is there now, but they're gonna only be a, 2.5, 3-inch caliper tree.
I just want to be clear in your letter from April 1st. I think it's just a typographical error. You said that test pits have not been done. Then you wanted to say in the next sentence, the
Have
test
been
pit
done.
was excavated?
They have been done.
Have been done. That's what I thought. That's an old reference.
Yeah.
Okay, good. I'm all set.
So, I think they've met the standard as far as the Wetland Protection Act and the town's bylaw is concerned. I respect and understand the point you're making, but I think until they are denied a building permit, until the building inspector denies them a permit, and which causes them to go to the ZBA for relief, until that time, they've met the standard, in my opinion, based on what I'm seeing in front of me, which is what we have to go by. We have to go by the four corners of what's in front of us. We can't anticipate a denial. So I think legally they've met the standard with regard to the Wetland Protection Act and the town's bylaw.
I concur with, like Al says, and that was my issue, was the roadway, driveway, crossing a paper street, not knowing who the abutter was on the other side, but if Public Works doesn't have an issue with, I guess there isn't much I can say about it, but it could come back and bite you.
We're willing to take the risk.
Sean?
So ordinarily, if this were a project coming in front of us and you were looking for a waiver to get over stream, I'd be very reluctant to do that because I'd say you have to go through, show alternatives, and, one alternative is not to build it. What would be your response in this specific circumstance to that situation or comment?
The no-build requirement is always an alternative. I guess that just robs the ability of that person to build on that lot and without any compensation. It's not really, unless the commission can find us a lot that equivalent to this that we could build on, I don't think that's a viable alternative.
So you'd find it to be a taking of a sort, right?
Yes,
Yep.
no, I
Yep, I don't have any other questions.
definitely agree with that.
And actually, just to elaborate on that, again, a long time ago, but your initial position was you did an alternatives analysis considering coming in from Layden,
Right.
and it was the least attractive alternative with regards to the
It's more
degree of
buffer
impact.
zone disturbance coming in from Leyden.
So there was another access point that
Right.
you considered and ruled out.
Right.
So it was more than just the no build.
Hold on, I remember the process, but I just wanted to be clear on that. Thanks.
Just one question. Are there any more approvals required for this project? Planning board, anything?
Other than a building permit, no.
Has planning board approved this? Are they done with
Again,
it?
we went and asked them about it, and I pointed out the Form A plan, and that it had been previously approved, and their position was, well, we're not gonna comment on the previous approval. If you wanna submit a new approval, go ahead, but it's, we're just not gonna comment on the previous approval with no application in front of us.
Did they rule that the previous approval was adequate for the
They made
purposes
no
of this
ruling. They said,
project?
we're not gonna go back and make any ruling on
Okay,
what was done by the planning board previously.
okay.
I think they quoted that, let the Conservation Commission, and they can deny them, and they can fight it at the Conservation Commission level.
Yeah, but that aside,
Challenge accepted.
you have a Form A approval
Yep.
duly recorded.
Right,
So why would they reconsider it?
Exactly, I agree.
right. I agree, and I actually didn't find the Form A approval until the day of the meeting. I went and searched the registry and finally found where the plan had been approved and presented to them in the first meeting, and so that was kind of a surprise to them. We didn't know whether it had an approval or not, but when I did find it, it kind of said,
I'm sure we have some abutters here. Would you like to make a comment? Would you please come up to that podium, please? And-
Patty, 10 Kingston Street. The last meeting, which was a long time ago, he was asked to do a wildlife study. Was that done?
So,
I'm not sure who asked about it, I'm sorry.
yeah.
Who asked about it? Was
I
some,
remember. So, after we further evaluated the crossing versus the regulations, the crossing meets the standards. And so in the regulations, if you meet the standards, you don't have to do a wildlife habitat study. But if he wasn't meeting it, then you'd have to go through that process.
Okay, and then one more thing. I don't understand this whole thing here, but something about the front, they were just talking about the frontage, and it was you that said something about the frontage, and you said it was the road. It's not a road. It's another house. So how can that,
So frontage doesn't mean, that's exactly the question I was asking, physically improved roadway versus legal frontage.
okay.
So the frontage of this particular lot is both on Layden and Katuitt.
I'm not
And-
exactly sure where it's gonna sit. I'm confused as to where this monstrosity is supposed to be.
The building itself?
Like, yeah, where is it exactly supposed to be? Because they're talking about cutting these trees, and then he just said that it's a road, the frontage is a road. It's not, it's another house. It crosses the stream.
So you were at the site walk, I remember?
Yeah,
Yeah, you
I
were,
was,
okay.
yeah.
So as we were standing out there having the discussion, there were a stand of 4 good-sized trees.
Pardon me?
There was a stand of 4 good-sized trees.
Exactly,
to
50
your
plus
backyard.
years old.
That's those 4 trees that are right there
Right,
shown. Actually, I guess it's 5
Right.
trees shown. And the question became, there's that one up near the house.
right.
Could it be saved? And the next one up right there by the driveway, could it be
Right.
saved? And the reality is, we were looking at it, again, out of our jurisdiction
Right.
because it's not in the no disturb, you can't cut it. We were saying, could they be preserved? And the reality is, we didn't think so. We asked him to look at it, and he answered that given the grading, they may be able to not take them down, but the reality is they're not gonna survive because of root damage and canopy
Right, so
pruning.
those roots go under our sidewalks and come right to our foundations. So those are getting ripped up, and it's wetlands now. It's gonna be 10 times wetter when those trees are gone. Like, I don't understand the whole premise of wetlands if we can do all this and keep going back and boom, boom, boom. This has changed 10 times.
So that's why, it's one of
So
the
what is the
reasons why
point
we
of
have a
saving
note.
wetlands?
It's one of the reasons we have a note disturb of 25 feet. Those trees are up between 75 and 100 feet away from the wetland. So they're gonna have negligible, if no impact on the wetland at all, especially one that's an intermittent
And I
stream.
get that you're the Conservation Commission, but they're gonna have an impact on our properties. They're gonna rip up those trees, they're gonna have an effect on us. We're the residents of North Andover, he's gonna come, and as soon as he gets in there, he's gonna do something, and something's gonna go wrong, we all know that, and then it's gonna be like, well, now we have to do this, and now we have to do that. We're the residents, we're the ones that live there, those are our homes. Nobody rents there, we're all owners.
You know, if it was noise or vibration or foundation damage, of change of the groundwater outside of our jurisdiction, your remedy is between you and the developer. Hate to say it, not this commission.
It's gonna
Well,
be a
we're-
crap
well,
show.
These 2 trees that we're talking about trying to save, the others they are saving, these 2 that they aren't able to save, from a conservation perspective, are a non-issue. We as a courtesy, listening to what we heard from the site walk, we
Yeah.
asked, could we look at that? And we did. You know, we looked at it and they looked at it. And I understood what I was saying, and they've answered in a way that I was actually anticipating. That you could save them, but they're going to be greatly impaired, and they're gonna probably be damaged for 5 or 6 years. They're gonna have to come down anyway. So take them down to begin with and just be done with the headache.
And when we take the trees out, those 2 trees, they wouldn't pull the stumps out, they'd grind the stumps, so that they don't have to pull the roots out and make a mess on your property. They would go to the property
gonna be a
line,
mess.
they can grind the stumps out, they can cut the roots off at the property line and not have to disturb the land.
One individual will benefit from this whole project, and that's this individual. The rest of us are like doomed. I mean, we got a petition, 198 residents, 98 of them signed the petition. Nobody wants this. This is not going to be something that, I mean, we're the residents. He's gonna come, do, and go.
We have a careful balance between a landowner's rights and an abutter's rights, but moreover, our obligation to uphold the Wetlands Protection Act statewide and I by law. The reality is, if you've got 98 people who feel so sincere about this, if you want to preserve this lot, buy it. Get together and buy it.
It's
There's no
very-
other way to preserve it. It's their right to develop this lot within the realm of our
And
Protection
it's
of Wetlands
changed, the
Protection
plan
Act.
has changed a million times. It's like, we've given him ample opportunity, let's change it now, and let's change it now. Well, he did everything so that all this, meeting after meeting after meeting, being canceled, so that he could get all his ducks in a row. Well, what about us? When do we get to say, you know what, we're not ready for this yet, we need a couple more months, so that we can get our ducks in a row? He got to get all his i's dotted and all his t's crossed, so that he can get a yes, and here's the voting residents of North Andover, that it's tough, oh, you get to come in and ruin our property.
But you need to understand, I know it's difficult to understand.
It's very difficult
I've lived
to
here my whole life
understand.
too. I've seen 1,000 houses get built around me too.
course.
The point is, if they meet the legal standard, and that's the key here, if they meet the legal standard, we would be wrong to deny it
I
because you
understand.
don't want it.
I understand.
No disrespect to you at
I
all
get it.
when I
I
say that.
understand.
But a lot of people say, I don't want this, I don't want that. If the applicant is not meeting the standard legally, we can deny it, we can force them to amend it or modify it. In this case, they've gone back to the drawing board, they've listened to the input from you, all of you, and our staff, and they've put a product in front of us that meets the standard. We can't be arbitrary or capricious and deny it. We can't do that. It's just legally not, the town would be sued, and
So how do we get
your
that
rights
chance?
have been preserved by your participation and your objection, your public objection, but unless you can find a legal standard that's wrong with the application, we can't deny it. We just can't.
I think it's fair to say, and not showing any cards here, any proceeding that we're involved at, once a decision's rendered, you can either disagree with us, or you can disagree with the applicant, but any abutter's remedy is file an appeal. And it just takes it out of our realm and takes it up to the Superior Court, correct?
Superior Court, and appeals are not free.
And appeals are not free, because they recognize that sometimes it's just a hurdle waiting to be thrown up in front of people. But the reality is, if you really think there is basis for doing that we've somehow erred in our decision, you appeal it through the Superior Court. I'm not welcoming that, because I think we've been really, really cautious.
I understand
to make
that,
sure
I understand that, but it
we're
seems
doing
like he's
right.
gotten chance after chance, and
If you go to appeal, it's gonna cost you money to go to Superior Court.
I understand.
And what are you gonna base your, you can't go to the court and base your,
But they have a right to do it.
you
you
can't
have that
put
right
a
to do that.
position to it that you don't want it.
No, I get it.
You have to have a legitimate
Well, of
reason.
course, we're saying we don't want it, but there are reasons why we don't want it. It's our property, it's our homes. I mean, you wouldn't want it in your 15 feet from your yard either.
I agree with absolutely everything you're saying. I do, I hear you. I wouldn't
I
want this in my backyard.
understand, and I know you're doing it by the legal thing, but he comes in, he swoops in, he leaves, and we're left with a mess.
But it's not even it's not the legal thing, it's just the scope of what we do here is limited to protecting
You know?
wetlands. All the grapes and great points that you make aren't dealing with protecting the wetlands, it's about what it's doing to your property and other things.
I am concerned about the wetlands, because somebody asked last time about the wildlife. There's tons of stuff out there.
So
They keep,
natural heritage declined,
what's
Right.
that?
natural heritage, which covers rare and endangered species,
Uh-huh.
has declined on this site.
Yeah, I doubt there's anything.
Well, I'm
There's
just telling
nothing
you,
out there.
Right.
They said there's nothing
I mean, I'll
there.
be honest, there's nothing,
Well,
but there are.
But that was a legal, that was one of the
Right.
hurdles, was natural heritage.
Right.
They waived on it, and they said, no, there's nothing there that we need to protect. So that's just the boxes, you check off the boxes as you go along.
But when you do a permanent alteration, when you hit a threshold,
Yeah.
it requires that wetland habitat. And
Yeah.
because of the things that were raised and because of the things we asked, they designed that crossing in such a way to not exceed that threshold. So
Right.
the wildlife habitat, and it's not just a technicality, it basically says what they're proposing is a de minimis impact, therefore there is no impact to the wildlife habitat. Why do a wetlands habitat study?
So what happens now? What happens now after this?
Well,
What,
we haven't closed this yet.
okay,
If we close it tonight,
okay,
we'll issue a decision within 21 days of today.
okay.
And then the decision will be published. And then there's a 10-day, I believe, a 10-day appeal period from the date that the decision is published.
Okay.
During that 10-day appeal period, you either appeal or you don't. And then once the appeal period is satisfied, the applicant can go apply for a building permit.
And one more
And that's,
question. I don't know if you-
and that's the last hurdle.
if you have the answer to this, but how are they getting in there to actually construct this?
We have the construction sequence, so that's actually, it's pretty well spelled out. We asked that last fall.
You can get a copy of that from,
Yeah, I'm gonna be honest with you, I probably have a copy, I have absolutely no idea what it means.
well, I think you don't give yourself enough credit, you know.
Well, I appreciate that.
You're coming in from Katuitt, you're gonna hand prune a bunch of stuff, you're gonna gain your access, you're gonna build your crossing, you're gonna get in, all your construction access will be from Katuitt. Granted, there'll be some tangential stuff, but you're not coming in through Kingston, you're not coming in across any abutting property. All your work is coming in from Katuitt, and that's where that's spelled out.
They'll actually put a safety fence around the north and the east side of the property to, so there's no people crossing into the site who could potentially get hurt, kids or whatever. They'll put up a safety fence, so.
That's very kind of them, thank you.
Question, so you said for phase one, you said that the removal of vegetation can be done manually?
Yep.
Okay, so that's like chainsaws,
Chainsaws and landscape crews,
okay.
cut it, drag it out, and chip it up.
Okay,
Yeah.
and then.
It's not even big enough for a machine. It's not a huge area.
Okay,
It's just all bittersweet, right?
and then from there, you put the mats down,
Right.
and then you get a small piece of equipment
Right.
in?
Medium-sized backhoe that goes over,
Backhoe.
and then they can do the
The
wetland
wetland
replacement area,
replication.
stockpile everything up on the property. Then they can start removing the wetland material, put it into the replacement area, save whatever vegetation they can. Although I don't know that there's
I don't
anything
think
that's
there's
not
much.
invasive. So,
I don't think there's much.
and get the wetland replacement area done.
Okay,
And then they can start the footings. They're gonna need two machines. They'll take the mats out, one machine will be on one side, dig a footing, one machine will be on the other side, dig the footing, pour the footings, build the culvert, which is all, they build it and then they lower it in. They're not heavy, they're just aluminum. And then they start backfilling on either side.
okay.
And once
And
they
then-
have, a roadway built over the culvert, now they can just cross over the culvert.
And so in terms of the entirety of the shrub, brush, trees that you have to get through to get to the open part, is that all hand?
Yep.
It is, okay.
All
So
of
it's
it.
not like we're gonna have skid steers in there or
We'll do it all by
big
hand.
claws chopping, okay, all right.
Yep.
Okay. And then it's just the equipment to do the excavation?
Right.
Okay.
Are there any more questions from the butters?
I have a question. Suzanne, 6 Kingston. Can you promise me that I won't get water in my basement?
You cannot. Buckle up.
We have,
4 huge trees.
Literally, yes or no?
well, you know what, I can guarantee you this won't make your problem any worse. Because I don't know what problem you have, and nobody's
have
ever gonna say that they're gonna make your existing problem go away, so.
I don't have a problem.
We don't have water now, but we will.
This development will not change any problem you have in the basement.
So if I don't have water
And it
now
won't change it.
and I get water, then what happens?
Right. I mean, you won't get water, but
Too bad.
this project will not cause you to have water.
So they're not allowed to change the preconditions. The pre and post conditions on the site have to be the same. So whatever the,
Not from a groundwater perspective,
well,
not from conservation. But the reality is knowing construction, to be a little more direct than your vague answer is, when you dig out a foundation adjacent, what you've done is basically created a relief point.
Right.
If anything, your properties might be influencing their foundation. But the reality is it's dug out next to a brook, so the whole thing is gonna probably drain better than it ever has.
Right.
But nobody's gonna commit to that at this table.
well, it can't be guaranteed. There's no such thing as a guarantee.
And it's not covered under the Wetlands Protection Act.
They don't give them a Sears
Surface
anymore
waters
either.
only, not groundwater.
So like why I literally just bought my first condo, like first time homeowner, like I just don't understand, like, why destroy something if all these trees are gonna, like, have to be taken down, and, like, I just don't understand why, like, why put, like, why take half of the backyard, like, why do it, like, why ruin everything, like, in the back, like,
It's a property that
It's their
somebody
property,
owns and
it's
they
their
want to develop
property.
it.
but they can't even promise that, like, my house isn't gonna get ruined.
You're right. Nobody can give you a promise. You're absolutely right. But they have landowner rights to conduct activities within the law on their property. So that's the
So is
rub.
like that one of the things that, like, I could say, that they could, like, look into if we take it?
Well, you're anticipating a problem that doesn't yet exist.
I don't think you can substantiate it, but, you know, you're entitled to do whatever you can within the rights of appeal with the court. It's out of our realm at that point, but
It's really unlikely. Based on the way the site is designed and proposed, it's really unlikely, very unlikely.
You know, what I saw on the sidewalk, which was pretty gleaming to me, and it still is today, even with this discussion, is the reality is you guys, as a group, have enjoyed your backyard, which is their backyard. You've been using this backyard, you've been mowing it, you've been maintaining, it. You've been in violation of the Wetlands Protection Act and our bylaw by doing all the things you've been doing for all these decades. Doesn't make it yours. Doesn't make it yours. You've just been doing it by trespass. So the reality is to turn around and now say, well, what gives him the right? Well, what gave you the right? The reality is, we have to balance those rights. You've enjoyed it for all this time. It's not yours. It's theirs. So long as they're proposing something that meets the law.
Right, they let us take care of it for 50 years, that was okay. Folks, we're just the wetlands protection people. We're not balancing anybody's lives or privacy. If it affects the wetland, we do our best job of interpreting our guidelines and regulations, and we'll render a decision. But whether it was somebody else's use or mowing it, it's got nothing, unfortunately. I understand where you're coming from. We're just not the right forum for a lot of your issues.
Right.
Sorry.
We get it. We get it.
No, we don't.
I'm going to leave you with this thought.
It's all about
Everybody has to live somewhere. And having been a resident of this town since I was small, I've seen people move in I saw the town go from 8,000 to 30,000 people. Houses and roads and subdivisions have been put places where I used to go when I was a kid. It's just the way it is. If you don't own it, it hurts, but if you want to protect your view, you either got to buy it or...
Well, it's not the view, it is the wetlands, because I'm not sure what, like, we're talking about the wetlands.
So the evidence...
So if you can go around building the wetlands, and there's all these little things that we can do to get around it, then what's the point of having
Well, the law...
a wetlands committee? They're just gonna do it anyway.
The law has setbacks.
Right.
Okay, the law has setbacks. The applicant, as I stated at the outset, has met the setbacks, has met the standards. His design, as proposed, meets the legal definition of what is permittable. The only thing that can stop it now is if they screw it up when they break ground.
Well, I'm going to pray that happens.
Pray for something. Don't waste the prayer. Don't waste the prayer on that, right?
On this, the commission actually just takes into consideration. I know that you're the wetlands commission, but that you do consider the residents in North Andover. Where are the residents?
Yeah, no.
He's coming in and he's
Voting
out.
residents.
We live here too, guys. Come on, we all live here too.
We're still here, and we love our community. This
And
is
actually,
like-
Ben's from here too, by the way.
Whatever.
He's like
We're
15
good.
generations in this town.
Clearly.
His family name is on the chart.
I'm not joking. His
I have no interest in that whatsoever.
Right, it doesn't,
In fact, all the more reason we hold him to a higher standard.
right.
I'm just saying. I again, Patty, I understand. I do understand. We can't
I understand.
just deny it because we can't.
Well, you said you're not gonna make a decision tonight. Is that
We're gonna,
correct?
well,
I think, unless there's more questions, I think we have enough to.
there's gonna be a vote at some point to close and issue a decision.
Okay.
So if you want to pay attention and stick around for a minute and see where this goes.
Well, how long?
It's good.
Deciding the-
We're
so
doing-
this
we're
is
doing
where-
everything right now.
This is where we're going from this point.
We're doing everything right now, yeah. Yeah, we're doing everything right now. This isn't gonna survive another meeting.
Let's bring this back to where we're about to be. We've asked all the questions and I am satisfied with the answers. I believe that what is now before us meets the standard for me to consider closing initial decision. That's where I am.
I'll concur.
I don't have any further questions, Mr. Chairman.
And I concur. Sean?
Same here.
Jack? All right, so we need a motion.
I'll move that we close and issue a decision within 21 days. Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, and that's unanimous.
So now we have 21 days to issue a documented decision.
And you have 10 days
And I
after the
don't think
20.
we're issuing, Amy, we're not issuing the decision tonight, so it'll probably be issued at the next meeting.
I'm sorry, I didn't get that one.
We're not gonna, we've closed, the subject is closed.
Okay,
No new information can come in now.
okay.
We will take the data, the facts that we've collected, we will render a decision, a written document, and that'll be issued at the next public meeting.
And then you have 10 days to appeal.
And you can get a copy of it, you can get copies of that decision once we vote it in and accept it. And then from that decision, you can decide if you want to hire counsel and appeal, or maybe just form a group and buy the lot. There's always that option for you guys.
And you can watch the delivery.
If you got 100 people, really, if you got 100 people that are concerned, you just form an association, money might be better spent than spending it on a lawyer on an appeal. Anyway, you got time to talk about it. We're not gonna render the decision until the next meeting, which is, Amy, when?
27th.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
But just to let you know, we don't take any more discussions or testimony. It's just, we decide it, so whether you're here or watching it on television, it's not gonna be any different.
We appreciate your participation, though.
Thank you.
Hey, Ben, you did a good job.
Ben, you have
Take it-
you have
take-
security?
take
He
it-
hasn't- He's not done yet. He's gotta get a building permit.
I know, but I mean, you just sit there and take that abuse and just sit, grin and bear it.
Ben, listen, you didn't even they didn't even land a hard punch on you, buddy. We could've opened it up to a, bare knuckle contest. They're gonna get you in front of the old fire station.
Thank you. All right, let's see, where are we? 242-1840 Mill Pond Townhouses Clubhouse.
We didn't get very far, do we?
Good evening. Bill Hall with Civil Design Consultants, and I'm here representing the Mill Pond Homeowners Association for this notice of intent. So this is taking place at, like I said, the Mill Pond condominiums. This particular area is their clubhouse area. This clubhouse has been before you before, if I'm not mistaken, for either, I don't recall if it was a notice or an RDA. It was an RDA, okay, for a RDA. So some of the work that we are proposing, I believe, was previously discussed. However, we're expanding upon that work, so we're here before you with this notice. So what we're proposing here, you can see centrally in the plan is the clubhouse in a light gray with the pool to the north of it. We're proposing a walkway that connects from the pool area down around to the east of the clubhouse and ties in with some improvements that they've made with a handicap ramp and also with a new deck. That continues down towards the southern portion of the lot and ties into some existing stairs that are there. We're proposing to remove the existing stairs as well as the retaining wall because they're in pretty poor condition, and replace those. Then as we were going through this whole design, we met with the architect that was working on this clubhouse, and he informed us that if they want means of second egress on this clubhouse, that the rear door has to be ADA compliant. So what we're proposing is a platform that's meeting the doorway, because right now it has maybe a 6 or 8 inch change in elevation, a step out from there. So we have a platform and a ramp with handrails to meet ADA compliance coming down to a walkway that goes to the west and ties back in with the parking area. All this has to be either a ramp with handrails or less than 5% slope, so that's what we've designed with this. This work is within floodplain, almost, I want to say maybe like 3/4 of it is within floodplain. And we're compensating for that with the grading that we have. We have a table on our plan here to show that. And then we also have a very small amount of work that's within riverfront area, as well as the 25-foot no disturb that's located off to the west. It's a very, very small portion of a proposed infiltration trench, as well as just some disturbance to actually install that trench. It's currently grass out there right now, so it'll be returned to loam and seed afterwards. And then we also have an area of buffer zone that's to the east. We're outside the 50-foot no build with that. We're between 50 and 100 for a small portion of that work. As part of the RDA, it was requested that we do an infiltration trench along the walkway. So we did that all along the walkway that's to the east. And then this new portion of walkway that comes from the rear, most of that drains into an existing infiltration trench. We believe that has a capacity to support this small impervious area. So then we're only adding one small section along the west where it's not going to get into that trench. So that's all I have, but I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Joe?
So I understood every word you said narratively and was able to pull it off the plan. What I'm looking at in the plan and trying to, in the 4 minutes we've just heard about it, is trying to determine, can somebody actually build this from this plan? I'm not sure it has sufficient detail to do that. And again, the record drawing, the permit we would ever consider issuing would refer to the drawing, and I'm not sure this is something that would end up in the contractor's hands that they would actually build. Is this a hybrid of the architectural drawings, or is there another interim drawing you're going to expect the contractor to build from?
No, I mean, so far, the only question that they've had was really the ramp, just width on that, width and length, because they've sent this out to bid, but that's the only question we've gotten back from bidding on this so far. But we'd intend for them to be able to construct off of this.
Because I'm looking at the compensatory flood storage at increment at each 1 foot contour interval.
Sure.
And
Yep.
you're doing a good job, threading that needle and getting it there. But looking at the grading detail here, again, it's not precision, but you're so close. Does the end result actually hit these numbers?
Yeah, so if the contractor requested, then we could go out and stake out those elevations for them so that they can hit that. But generally, they'd go out and do it. We do an interim as-built. If they don't meet it, we let them know. They go out and they do a little more work to get it where it needs to be.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm all set for now.
So I just want to follow up. This is an NOI that's in front of us, right?
Yeah.
This plan is not stamped.
And it has to be.
And am I missing something? It's not a stamped plan. It has to be stamped by either an RPLS or
We
an
can stamp,
RPE.
yeah, we can stamp it.
I mean, it's got to be stamped as the record drawing
Yep.
for the contractor to follow, for us to follow, to have a reference point for an as-built when you complete the project. Can't be any deviations from the approved plan.
Yeah, and we have no problem stamping.
Okay,
We can do it,
that's
yeah.
all I had. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
It's funny, I have no issue.
I have,
You have a record drawing
that
stamp?
scared me because
No, I just didn't have, mine is not,
I printed off the electronic, that's why.
sorry. So you have something?
So yes.
We're just making
Sure.
sure you're doing your job, that's all.
It seems to have
I,
the
you
same
know,
level of detail.
honest to God, didn't think this was gonna get by, Amy, but I just couldn't believe my eyes when I was looking at this thing, and there's like nothing on it. I said, it's a notice of intent, there's no way she missed it. You didn't miss it.
You know what it was? We revised it yesterday to add the 25-foot no disturb next to the riverfront area, and I didn't put a stamp on there when I sent it out yesterday.
All right, so
that's,
So which means
it's-
doesn't show,
Okay, so yes,
Yeah.
You're right,
Yeah.
but I didn't get the
we need the revised plan stamped.
physical plan.
we'll need to deliver a physical copy, yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, all right.
Thank you, Amy.
I just, because they had submitted a waiver request for the 25, and I was having a really hard time figuring out where the 25 was. And I asked them to put it on the plan.
You shouldn't have to wonder where it is. It should be right there in front of you.
Okay.
I'm all set with the plan. The only thing I want to just say, the last time when they applied for the RDA, it wasn't you. We questioned why they weren't putting a walk.
Yeah, and I,
And it said we didn't need it. It's okay.
yeah, I wasn't involved in that process, you said, and it actually, we did quite a bit of design work to get this eastern walk done, and it didn't come up until much later in that process, because this was supposed to be before you 2 or 3 months ago, and it just got delayed because of that.
The first time they forgot about the walk.
Yeah.
I have no questions. John?
I have no question.
Jack?
No questions.
Okay. Motion, so we have to continue
They
it?
gotta come back,
With the revised plan. So that's the only thing we'll
they
wait
gotta
on.
come back with a revised plan.
Okay.
We've gotta kick you for one meeting.
Yeah, that's fine.
To get it, we have to have that plan to close.
Yep,
The motion
no
continues.
problem.
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Name and address.
Sharon Warren, 87 Mill Pond, but I'm actually really glad that there's this plan because I live in 87. There is no way to get to the mail room, which is across the pool area from our house, across another road. There is no way for anybody in a wheelchair or even myself. I've slipped so many times on the ground, so I'm just really glad that this is before you, because when they put the ramp in for the clubhouse and did that, it was like, well, where's that ramp going? It's like, and they took away the steps or the pathway to the steps. So anyway, my response was just to say, great, please accept this and go forward with it. So thanks for listening.
It's a pleasure to have a happy abutter.
No kidding.
We'll take that all day long.
Thank you. All right, so we need a motion to continue. By Joe.
I'm second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, and that's unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rick.
Next one is 242-1839, 1160 and 1116 Great Pond Road. What we're gonna do is we're gonna we'll open it, but you're in front of planning and zoning, so we're gonna just continue it.
Well, we'll do an initial introduction.
Right.
Get any feedback from you guys. We won't, spend, copious
Okay.
amounts of time, but let's introduce.
5
Yeah,
minutes.
you can give
Yeah.
if you want a 5-minute presentation.
Yeah, we
and
have
we'll
a
go from
nice slide deck
there. Okay.
for you. So,
My name is Anthony Cleves. I'm with Whitman and Bingham Associates, civil engineers for the project. With me here as well as Andrew Leonard, principal planner and landscape architect. Also, Paul Griffin, CFO from Brooks School, and Brian Vaughn from Smolak and Vaughn, in case we get into any questions. But, thank you for your time. The project you have before you tonight involves 2 distinct areas of the Brooks campus. One is the Boathouse area, and the other is faculty housing area. These 2 areas are both existing developed areas that we're looking to redevelop, involving removal of existing buildings, removal of some existing pavement, concrete, redoing some lawn areas and pathways and whatnot. The first area we can briefly discuss is the Boathouse area. So what you have on the screen now is the existing boathouse area, very close to the lake, if you're familiar with this area. There's 2 existing boathouses. One of them, the Lyman Boathouse, which is on the right-hand side of the plan, is about 1 foot away from the wetlands. The other one, the Holcomb Boathouse, is a little further away from the wetlands along the lake, about 30 feet or so. Both of these boathouses are intended to be demolished to create a new boathouse. Also, you'll see some existing gravel areas along the the lakefront along the existing wall. You'll see in the next plan, that's going to be redeveloped, and that's going to be pulled back and removed. So if we can go to the next one. Yeah. So these are the proposed conditions. In red, you can see those existing boathouses. Again, those are going to be removed, and there's the proposed new boathouse to replicate those two. The existing gravel areas that are very close to the lake are going to be removed, put in a mix of reinforced lawn and lawn areas to maintain the access to the lake, but those gravel areas are going to be restored with vegetation. As you can see on the right-hand side, where the boathouse is close to the wetland, that area is going to be restored, vegetation and plantings. So restore that area that's really close to the wetlands. Based on past experience with this commission on previous project in regards to delineating the non-disturbance zone, the 25-foot non-disturbance zone, what we're proposing here along that area is a stone wall, as the commission had asked of us on the south entrance project, if you remember that project. So that's the wall in there to delineate that 25-foot non-disturbance zone. So again, on this particular project, we're removing all of the impervious surface that's within the non-disturbance zone and all of the gravel in the non-disturbance zone. Pulling back significantly the impervious and gravel in the no-build zone, but there still is a portion of the new boathouse in there. We tried pushing the boathouse back as far as we could for it to still act as a boathouse. As it is now, it's 20 feet further away than the existing boathouses, so we're asking the students to go a little bit further to the lake. But this is a good compromise with that. Going any further back becomes more difficult to utilize it as a boathouse, but also the site work gets more intrusive as well. So this was a good spot, we thought, for it to balance all of that. That's a brief overview on the boathouse area. If you have any questions or concerns before we move on to faculty housing.
Yeah, again, first shot out of the gate.
Yeah.
I would look for net improvement here beyond just the description we just heard. I think that anything within a 100-foot buffer zone, I'd like to see low-impact development methods employed, not just a gravel driveway, but a gravel driveway that's designed that provides a benefit for infiltration and maybe cleansing of the water before it gets into the water column. I'd look at some green roof principles. I'd look at pathways and rain gardens for collecting runoff from the roof. I mean, all of those things I think are fair game right out of the gate. So when you come back, I'd like to hear something about all of those.
Yeah, I mean, we did look a little bit at that. Again, we're looking at those redevelopment, reducing impervious, reducing gravel, all improvements there. We do have crushed stone drip edges along the sides of the proposed boathouse to help promote some infiltration on that, and we can get into that further.
And the last piece of it would be the revegetation, just an O&M plan of what sort of, practices, best management practices you would use for caring for those lawn areas. Green lawn and well mowed is not necessarily the best thing right on our water supply. So think about you probably already have, but think about all those and report back to us what your O&M plan might look at for lawn care and vegetation care. That's all I have.
Just increase setbacks where applicable, where it can be done. Setbacks from the lake. More is always better.
Yeah.
Normally less is more, but in this case, not so much.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Jim.
I like what I see, as far as, at least you made an attempt to pull it away. I'm a lake person. I'm here because of the lake, even though it's not under our jurisdiction, which I'll never figure out. The roadway coming in near the clubhouse, there's several different types of material they can use. Maybe like a block with grass in the middle, so it absorb water. We did a job once. We mixed stone base with loam, so it had a consistency of compaction for driving over, but it actually grew grass. Instead of having just a roadway, because that's all downhill from way up top, so.
Yeah, that's the existing gravel roadway that's there that we're going to reshape that.
I've been down there, so I know it's a pretty steep roadway, so that water would continue right, any water from the roadway would go right into the lake. So, if we could address those issues and some alternatives, that's the only, but as far as the rest of it, I think it's good so far. Thank you. John?
If I understand, tell me if I'm missing something, so nothing is within 25 feet, correct?
The proposal, yeah, correct. I mean, existing now.
Right, but
Yes, very
proposed.
much so, but
Yeah.
that is correct, yes.
And the only part that's within 50 feet is the corner
Yes.
of the proposed boathouse? How much of that is, how far into the 50 are you going there?
That is,
Or just distance from,
Just a couple feet.
yeah, I think it's like 5 feet or so, I believe.
can you all just pull it out of there?
So the struggle, Andrew Leonard, so the struggle we have is the boathouse itself, there's a slope that goes up as the chair just described. And if you push the boathouse back, it causes us to actually do a lot more uphill. So we're trying to find the happy medium of being as far away from the water as we can and still have it serve as a boathouse. And also not push it so far up the hill that we actually cause greater issues uphill than we already have to accommodate for accessibility and other concerns. So we're trying to toe the line between the two. We really, like even getting off of the tributary wetland, we really tried to put this as far up the hill we could and as far away as we could. So ideally would love to do that, but if by doing that, I think we're going to cause a lot of other secondary issues.
What if you just reduce the footprint by the amount that you're within the 50?
So the footprint specifically designed to the program that is being served. So it's the number of boats that are needed for the program. So it's actually, if we shrink it, it affects how the program is stored, which is sort of the point of the project. So it's sort of like that's why we tried so hard to move it away and not just try and add on to what's there, or really to build a clean building, a modern building, and move it as far as we could. So we did wrestle with this for a while.
Chasing the grades is a function of not wanting to put retaining walls. You could do some landform retaining walls to make those grades still work and push it a little further out. You just haven't shown it here. But again, this is eye candy. It's not detailed design, but it seems to me that you should probably look at that before you exhaust your alternatives analysis, because without exhausting it, we're not going to let you get in the 50.
Okay. All of those grades are specific contours that are all designed contours. So those are not, yes, it's colored over the top.
But if you pushed it out and met the 50, and you could achieve that by simply putting a retaining wall on that upper gradient side, and still get the same functional aspect and meet the 50, that's an alternative we're going to look for you to exhaust. Because right now, you haven't exhausted that, and I'd say, no, you're not going to be in the 50. That's your point, Sean.
It is, and I think you've done a great job with everything else.
But you're close, real close.
And the wall, I appreciate the 25-foot wall as well. That's all I have.
Okay, thanks. Jack?
Yeah, is it still just one boat ramp to the lake?
Yes.
Okay, you're just gonna reuse that existing one?
Correct, yeah, that
Connect
remains,
to it?
yes.
Okay, and on your construction sequence, I mean, it looks like you've put some decent detail in there. It's not clear to me when you're gonna demolish the existing buildings.
So,
You've got a pavement removal and,
yep, so that would be,
number 8.
so number 8, remove existing pavement, concrete, and building areas designed for demolition. So that's the demolition phase.
So you're gonna do all this grading and everything prior to demolishing any?
Nope, so number 9 is perform site grading. So the first 7 items are really all to do with getting in there, getting your erosion controls in, number 1, first thing to have happen. construction entrances, and then you do some rough grubbing and whatnot in there, and then you get into the demo, and then you'll get into the grading, the mass site grading, and then the building foundations and so.
Construction sequence when it's more provable, I think. I'm saying.
It's like a high-level construction sequence.
Yeah.
And then we always require more detail at pre-construction.
I guess my concern is being such a sensitive area, obviously, you know, our inspection of erosion control prior to major grading is very important, especially on a project like this. And I'd ask you to add some more details so that our staff can, you know, be clear on, you know, when the right time is to inspect, very proximate to the demolition phase.
Yeah, I think also, I know we're getting very far ahead of ourselves, but, you know, possibly conditioning an approval that we have a contractor, the contractor that's going to do the work, submit their very detailed construction schedule, timelines, you know, as part of the pre-construction to go over with Conservation Department and Commission if need be. I agree, we as a team are very concerned as well with the lake. The Brook School's been a very, you know, good steward of the lake.
Sure.
If you get into the details of our erosion control plans, we try to really do them well. We have double rows of silt sock and silt fence along the perimeter of our area. Even though the slopes are not large in area, all of those slopes we're calling for erosion control blankets to be utilized. We don't want to have an issue where we have to say to the contractor, you're not doing a good enough job, because we can't take that chance here. So we're trying to really front load the design for that. So appreciate that, and we're with you on all those comments.
How much time are you gonna need to get through planning and zoning?
So we had a zoning Board of Appeals meeting last night, and what that was for is when you have a new structure, basically in the non-disturbance zone of the watershed, you need a variance from the ZBA, as you may be aware. We got that approval. They voted to approve that last night. So we've closed out that process, just waiting for a decision to be issued for that. Our first planning board meeting is April 26th, so we haven't met with them yet. So that will be our first, you know, hearing with them. As part of the process, we've submitted our plans, and they've been forwarded out to the town's review engineer, Horsley and Witten. So they're going to be part of the process as well. So yeah, we had no expectation of closing anything like you had mentioned, Mr. Chairman, in the beginning, but we wanted to get in front of you and get some feedback.
When is our next meeting?
The day after the
Day
planning
after.
board. So I think it'll be a good meeting then we could refresh and say, this is what we discussed at the planning board, and got some of those comments.
I was going to reserve further comment until to the next step that we take, but Jack raised a question on construction sequence. You've got your item number 6 is construction of temporary diversion channels as required, vague statement.
Yeah.
But in many instances, the condition during construction is your most potential for impact.
Absolutely.
So like, with regards to temporary siltation control and erosion control, stilling basins, dewatering schemes, where are those diversion channels? Those sorts of things we're gonna need to hear.
Yeah, and right now, we don't feel as though we need any, so we haven't shown them. We showed a stockpile area up out of the buffer zone, up above the large spruce trees there. So the small nature, we didn't expect the need for that.
What's the acreage involved here?
So square foot disturbance in the buffer zone was.
No, total disturbed
Total
area.
disturbance about 70,000 square feet.
So you have you're subject
Yes.
to construction general permit under
Yes.
NIPD's.
Yeah, but also, when you include this with the other project, you know, with the NIPD's permits, you guys, I'm sure very well familiar with, you can't segregate technically. So even though we're thousands of feet away from each other, cumulative, we're gonna be over a couple acres anyway. So we're gonna have to file a NIPD's and a SWIP and all of that.
Right, and we're gonna need to see those details on that. So the details with regards to, very specific details with regards to dewatering and where you channelize flows and control that water before it discharges, because it is all getting to the lake, but you need to manage that before that
No,
happens.
absolutely.
And we're gonna need to know that.
Yeah, I know, and I don't know if we do the same as we've done in the past, on the past part, again, when we get the contractor involved, sometimes, they have a little different sequence than we may want. I know what we did in the last project is we had the contractor, we met with Amy and the contractor, and they prepared their specific dewatering plan for that. So again, absolutely, we agree with all that, and that can go back before the commission too.
The difference on, just out of fairness, the difference on that one is, we had great faith in everything you've done out there.
Yeah.
Because you've demonstrated that.
Yeah,
This one, you're right on the lake.
Yeah.
This one, we're gonna need a little more information up
Yeah.
front
sure.
to create the umbrella that when we actually have those meetings with the contractor, we can get very specific at that point.
All right, so you think you'd be ready for, on the 27th? You
With
would
at
rather
least
wait
sort of
the
a
next
recap.
one? 'Cause we have our, we asked them some things to look, you would look into, and
So-
you're gonna wait, planning board's gonna come in,
26th,
they
yeah.
might make some changes. And are you gonna be ready for the next day?
Well, I think what I think would be, if we could do, is come back before the commission and give you an update, come back with some responses to your questions, let you know what happened at the planning board the night before. Absolutely not, we're not gonna have changes, ready to submit to you, but I think it'd be important to keep you in the loop, and maybe similar to tonight, just continue the discussion and evolution, so you're not seeing it for a couple weeks,
Okay.
if that's okay.
So we need a motion to continue.
No, we
So-
should talk about the boathouse.
Oh,
We still have
yes.
faculty housing. We have the other part of the project.
Yeah.
all one filing?
Yes,
Yeah.
Oh, okay,
Yeah,
all
it's
right.
all one filing.
I knew there was two
but
projects.
honestly, this is the more tricky one for conservation.
Spend on something that's gonna come back with us, maybe changed.
It may be the same sort of discussion.
I'm just
The
saying.
housing piece of it.
But honestly, the boathouse is a little more challenging for conservation than the faculty housing. So the faculty housing involves, if you're familiar with the existing property of 1116 Great Pond Road, Brooks School had purchased that property. And so it involves the demolition of that house, demolition of the existing driveway to that house, and then the creation of faculty housing in part of that area. So this area that's zoomed in here is the existing conditions. If you remember the south entrance, the new south entrance comes in where the existing driveway of 1116 was, just a little bit above the page. And so what we're going to do, this is the area that really is in the buffer zone. It's just removal of that driveway is the bulk of the work in the buffer zone for this particular project. So that existing concrete driveway would be removed and restored with lawn. And meadow, sorry, with meadow. It's not going to be,
It's not going to be a continually mowed surface. It'll just be meadow, seasonally.
Keep the existing wetland crossing
Yeah.
beneath there?
Yeah.
They're gonna restore that?
no, we're going
Keep it.
to leave that. Yeah, we're going to leave that. And then, so that's really the bulk of the project that's within the buffer zone. But if you can go to the next plane, you can kind of see, so there's the proposed removal of that, the demolition of that area. And then the next slide is, yeah, there we go. So this is where the bulk of the project is. Extending the existing driveway of faculty housing and placing 3 more faculty housing buildings in an open-air pavilion structure. All of this is out of the buffer zone. But again, it's the driveway was part of the project, so it's.
And it's the same mindset as the boathouse, is pulling away from the resource areas. So our proposed structures will be 120 feet further away. And the closest will be 263 feet from the wetland.
So again, this results in the same thing, removal of impervious surface of the area, getting rid of all the impervious surface in the non-disturbance zone, and the removal in the non-build zone as well. So it's, overall, the cumulative of these two projects together will result in reductions of impervious surface and gravel within the buffer zone of 3,700 square feet reduction in impervious surface and about a 1,000 square feet reduction in gravel surface combined.
Questions?
Not at this time.
Okay, the only questions the only thing I'm gonna be looking for is construction sequence and access You know, you're gonna tear the house down first and then work your way out, or you're gonna use the backside? You know, so that's something I'd like to know.
Sure, we can provide more detail on that. But it'd be the same thing, demolition's gonna happen at the beginning, for the house anyways. The driveway will probably stay in, more than likely to utilize as access for construction, and that may be one of the last things to happen is pull that out. But we can provide more detailed construction.
We like
sequencing.
construction accesses, because this is what we know, because versus you coming in, okay, we're gonna do this, and then all of a sudden, oh no, we're gonna do this, and because I know, I've been in construction for 50 years. It always doesn't work the first time.
Yep.
So,
but the expectation is we may still utilize that driveway for construction, or at least as a second means of access. Again, balancing with the operations of the school and students to keep a safe working environment too. And we can provide a little more detail on
yeah,
that.
I want to talk about the roadway that you're taking out, but we can do that later. Sean?
No questions at this point.
Jack? Okay.
Is there any
So-
butters here? I don't think so. No butters.
Okay, so we're gonna go. What?
Second.
To the 27th?
27.
Yeah, I think you get good motion.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Next chance. All right, we'll see you on the 27th.
Thank you very much for your time, appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you. Uh, 242-1841, Windrush Farm. Amy, is this in front of any other boards beside this one? No, okay, thanks.
Good evening. For the record, I'm Mary Rimmer, Rimmer Environmental Consulting, and with me here as well is Janet Nittman, who is the Executive Director of Windrush Farm. And we are here tonight, is this the new plan, Amy, that's on, or is it the? Okay, so we're here for a storage shed within the buffer zone to wetlands. It's a 71 by 18 storage shed at the back of the riding ring area. Right now, there's a lot of equipment that is stored in that area. There's an existing shed, and it's not quite deep enough for some of the equipment, and there's a fair amount of equipment and just supplies and things that need to be stored and are better stored inside. And so that area that is proposed is all gravel presently, but it does require the removal of 2 trees, which are shown on the plan there, a big pine and an oak. And we had a site visit, Amy and I, last week, and Janet, and we reviewed the wetland boundary and also determined that there is a vernal pool close to the project site. And you can see the plan that's being projected now is a revision based on our site inspection. And we have a vernal pool that's, we determined the mean annual high water to and extended 100 foot from that, and that goes about to wetland flag 5. So from flags 1 through 5, we have vernal pool habitat extending 100, you've got a revised, I should say.
100 feet or less from the mean high water.
Right. Within that area, your setback to the wetland that is within 100 feet to the vernal pool is 75 feet instead of the 50 feet. So with that, our structure was 2 feet too close to the to that zone. So we've revised the structure now so that it pushed it back towards the arena 2 feet. That is going to require some jerry-rigging where the existing shed is now where it ties in, but that end of the new structure is proposed to be a closed storage unit, kind of a tool shed area. So there is some ability to make that end of the building work and still make the setback. And the other portions will be open bay. We have a 2-foot gravel drip trench along the backside because it's going to be it's a shed roof, so it'll all drain towards the back. So we have a gravel drip strip there. There's some existing hoop tents and some other, and a small storage shed. They're all to be removed. They're all closer to the wetland than where we're proposing the storage shed. And also, because this property is subject to a conservation restriction that's held by the town of North Andover, we are including monumentation of the corners of the conservation restriction in this area, so that it's clear where the limit of the farm use is and where the limit of the conservation restriction is in the back there. So you can see there's two cedar posts on the corners and behind the shed. One is within one of the existing tents that's being used to house equipment right now. So that is essentially the project. We have a DEP number. We did file with Natural Heritage because the entire parcel is subject to, is within priority habitat. We do expect, as with the previous filings at Windrush, that we'll get a negative impact determination, but they've been taking their full 30 days to make those determinations, so we don't have that for you tonight.
Thank you. Joe?
Very thorough presentation. The monumentation of the corners on the CR is something we typically would have always wanted. For some reason, it just didn't happen. No big deal. Cedar post, though, is something that begs the question of permanence. So monumentation, I would look for something, typically would look for something a little more substantial. I mean, is a granite post or a bollard with a marker on it, something out of the realm?
No, that should be fine. A concrete or granite or something more permanent than a cedar post.
Now, we have markers for our
No disturb
habitat areas
zone.
for wetlands, but we don't have anything for CRs.
Right.
Yep.
They'd have to maybe get
But,
one
you know,
fashioned.
And I wonder if maybe the one market meets the same standard, but I think that's something that's just leave it up there for discussion for, pre-construction meeting,
Yeah.
but find something a little more appropriate.
Yeah.
Greenbelt
perhaps.
might have something because they're holding
Actually, yeah.
the CR as well on this, so.
Who's that? That's it, Greenbelt?
Greenbelt, yeah.
Greenbelt. I'm all set, thanks. I have no questions.
No questions, and thank you for moving the corner outside the 75-foot. I wish our early applicant did.
No questions.
So we'll need to continue because we don't have natural heritage yet.
Oh, you heard from Natural Heritage.
And I
Surprise.
don't believe there's
Okay,
any
so we need
others.
a motion to continue.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? That's unanimous.
It's-
Thank you.
Thank you, and just a quick question, if we get a negative determination from Natural Heritage, is it necessary for anyone to attend, do you think, at the next meeting, or what is your sense on this?
Well, we're butter opposition. Weigh it out.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks. All right. RDA, 268 Raleigh Tavern, and Jack has to recuse himself. You don't have to, you don't have to leave, you don't want.
We were able to receive an as-built plan that shows a compliant patio. So we have that in hand. I feel verified that the patio is outside of 50. So that was what we've been waiting for. So we have it, and I think we can close the hearing on the RDA and issue a -3 and lift the enforcement order.
Do I have a motion?
I have no questions. So moved. Here we go.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Can you do them both at the same time, or you have to do them separate? Enforcement order and the RDA.
Motion out.
It was a
Because you
group
moved
motion.
all my verbiage.
It was a group motion, we're on a roll.
And I don't think we need any conditions for the RDA because the work's done.
No.
Your normal pre-construction.
It's
No.
already done.
It's done.
So,
Yeah.
It was an after the
After the
fact.
fact.
understood that, I didn't know, okay.
Yeah, no,
That's good for my house.
I just want us to be consistent
Yeah, no.
in the eyes of the great and general court.
All right, we gotta get Jack back in here.
Jack's on the run.
Jack's on the run.
You may never get him back.
No.
hate when that happens.
I think I know where he is if we need to find him.
He's there already. Amy, is I'm looking ahead here. 271 Stevens Street, you only have lot 1,
Right.
but on narrative, on your recommendations, it has lot 2 on it also?
Do I?
It says it's got lot 1 and lot 2. Under your recommendations. Oh, there's
Same
lot
one,
1,
same one,
okay.
lot one.
So the one of
So
them,
we need an after
Okay.
the fact modification first, and then they're going for
that's, you
space.
did tell me that.
Yeah.
That's right, okay. What is it? Is it on here?
Hey, Jack, we're all set.
That matter.
Oh, yeah.
That
Yeah, yeah.
matter is complete.
What do you get lost? But even still, oh, there it is, okay.
So,
Don't mind me.
243 Great Pond Road
I got
next?
it, I got it. Wait, what's the next one? Next one is 242-1799, 243 Great Pond Road.
Good evening. Again, for the record, Bill Hall with Civil Design Consultants, representing the owner for this application. I'm sure you're all familiar with this project by now. It's has been before you with an enforcement order the last few hearings, and I believe we were here maybe a month or 6 weeks ago. We received an amended order with some conditions, one of them being to come for a modification to the original notice of intent, so that's what we're here for today. So I'll try and keep this fairly brief, but basically the plan is a little difficult to read just because there's so much going on with it. We tried to illustrate what was previously proposed there, and that's in a lighter gray color. And we also have some existing work. The existing koi pond has been located, the existing patio, deck area, all that's been located. There's a proposed retaining wall that is on the southwestern portion, I guess you could say, that is approximately 2 feet from the conservation restriction line. So that would be a new retaining wall to help pull that encroachment back within, outside of the conservation restriction. And then there's proposed grading and plantings along the eastern portion of the property. There's a small portion of steps to the north that have to be cut out. That's near the 155 contour between the location of the approved patio label and location of existing patio label. Then we've also provided a cross-section of that retaining wall, both a structural plan and on our plan to illustrate the grading and the intent to match the pre-existing grades before the start of construction out here. So that's what we're looking to do. It is a deviation from the originally approved plan, and it is a different configuration of the pond. However, as far as area goes, it is a very similar area of pond. So that's what we have, and if there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer those.
Amy, do you have the old plan?
The old plan?
Yeah. Can we overlay the old plan onto this one on the computer?
We do have it. Let me give you the large plan. It might be easier for you to read.
This is the approved plan. right here.
So the approved plan is in light gray.
Approved plan is in light gray.
So all the light gray is the pool, it's the koi pond, patio, deck.
So the enforcement order obligated them to do this, but also the restoration of the impacted area, the CR, right?
Right.
So the enforcement order still stands on its own, so the lack of detail of the downgrading restoration is still covered under the CR, even though it's not necessarily shown on this plan, correct? It says, on the enforcement, not the CR, excuse me, the enforcement order.
No, so the enforcement order said, provide an as-built plan that shows the deviations compared to the approved plan. and a
Regrade it to what was
And a
approved.
sequence to return it to compliance. And so, at the last meeting, we realized they want to keep the shape of the koi pond and the shape of this patio, which is different. So, the commission said come back for an
To
after-fact
modify the, so
modification.
that's what I'm saying, this is modifying that permit. The enforcement order still stands on
Yes,
its own.
exactly.
And all those other things are
Yes.
still, so the fact that they're not shown here doesn't matter, because that still
Right.
is its own document.
Yes.
I'm all set, I
Yes.
understand.
And we can approve all of those documents under the modification as well.
Got it.
If that helps.
I'm all set.
So you're satisfied with this list? This is your,
Yes, that was, they haven't changed the sequence since we last reviewed it, and we didn't have a problem with it last time.
you're happy with?
Yeah.
Could you show me on this plan where the conservation restriction is? I think
Sure.
It's somewhere in the lines.
It's, here, let's look on this one, since
This is not
this is
the
the
original?
plan. The
This is-
light gray has the original,
Light gray, all this stuff?
so this line. Is CR. CR goes this way, and it's all, so there's plantings. It's right along the edge, and it shoots off that way.
Okay, so all these plantings are in the restriction.
Some of the plantings are in the restriction, but it's planting. I mean, I don't know how you guys feel about planting, but, and they're all native, so we were able to,
And this has been disturbed, though, correct? They got last time I saw it, there was whole boulders in the way and stuff.
right,
Did they clean that all up?
so, I think this one shows, this is all that hardscape that they went crazy with out into the CR,
That'd be removed.
which is all gonna be removed, right?
Actually, that's yours.
Oh,
That's the
But,
Step
yeah,
blue.
but I still don't.
We need to increase our budget for pens.
Yeah.
I know we need some highlight pens. Okay, so remember we talked about the wall?
Yes.
the base of the wall is gonna be outside the conservation restriction.
Right. Yep, so there's a cross-section on the big plan, all the way to the right. It shows existing grade and then how it needs to come down to original grade and how the wall will be outside the CR.
The reason why I'm asking is that the approved plan, the high side of the koi pond, didn't need any elevations at all. So all of a sudden we had to put, and the other side was only gonna be 2 feet. And all of a sudden we made it 4 feet. So the elevation on this side, and on the high side, was changed to have to increase this side. And I can't, this plan is so
So
busy.
if you look to your right, at the cross-section, AA section right there,
Yeah.
the wall, what you can see is building the koi pond at the height that they did, and then simply chasing the grade out, encroached within the CR. Since we said you couldn't do that, the only way to hold, without totally rebuilding the entire pond, was to hold the pond on the upgrading side at the elevation you wanted it at, and then do that with a retaining wall, and that's what he's showing there, and then returning the grade back to what the original was. That's what this section shows. He builds it that way, that's what we asked him to do, if he does it this way.
So he did
The pond, the koi pond elevation is higher than what was originally approved.
Okay, that's
But
what
we allow that so long as he can stay out of the CR.
Okay. Okay. That was my question, because it was almost to the point that it was almost had to be a refile, because everything was changed.
And that was very early on in the enforcement action, that's the debate we were engaged in.
Yeah.
You might have been down south when that all started.
I wasn't here, no.
Yeah, but we addressed that in pretty great detail.
Okay. So you were comfortable with this?
We weren't comfortable, but we are satisfied with this being the reasonable solution.
Okay. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to step over you.
No, it's all right. Dewatering, are we happy with dewatering? Or does that need, is it called out?
We have a detail for it.
Okay,
Yep.
I'm good.
Sean, no questions?
Yeah, I guess my question has to do with the conservation restriction, the location of that line. We have enough trouble with wetland lines, which are flagged clearly and, surveyed on plans and everything like that. But we get deviations from time to time, and sometimes a foot or two makes a difference. Your detail on your cross-section of the retaining wall has you right at the edge of the conservation restriction. So my question's about buildability. How does the builder know where to stop?
Yeah, so early on I believe it was right after the enforcement order was issued, back in maybe December, we had staked the conservation restriction. So we went out there with the survey crew and staked the vertices of it where it changes direction.
Okay.
What we can do is, since we obviously don't want to go down that road again, is for that section of wall, we can go out there, we can stake where the wall should be going, first of all, and second, we can also put stakes along that conservation restriction line so that they know they could tie a string between the stakes and know visually we can't go past that line.
That's a good answer. I think that would be an important feature for pre-construction inspection.
Is this the original contractor?
As far as I know, yeah, they're all still involved.
The one that, okay.
The one that encroached on the conservation
first time.
restriction to begin with.
Didn't build anything the way it was designed.
True enough. Just the second note, and it's more of a calling out of a notation that you have on your plan, WPP1, is that the fence is to be removed. it's called out to be removed.
Right.
Yes.
Does that mean the entire fence is
Correct.
completely out?
Yeah, so the original proposal had that fence being relocated, but the homeowner has determined that the way it was going to be relocated and with what's gone on with the pond, it just wasn't going to be useful to them anymore, so they're just going to remove the fence altogether.
Okay, I just want to make that, just want it to be clear. And it seems like it is, so I have no other questions.
I'm gonna jump onto, unfortunately, you asked it, it made sense, and I didn't even consider it. Windrush Farm, who I think was the prior applicant to this one, at their major corners of this CR, they're putting monuments in. Cedar posts, we asked them, would you consider putting a concrete or granite wall in it, and they had no issue doing that. I'm not suggesting in a single-family house that anything elaborate like that is appropriate, but something probably is on a more permanent sense. We think this is the time to maybe get some sort of monumentation out there, more than the survey stakes during construction.
In view of how this project has proceeded up to now,
Yeah.
I'd be in favor of that.
And we have an open enforcement order that is in place until June 30th. So we have no problem.
Yeah.
It's an easy fix.
Have they already done the repair?
No.
No.
So that monumentation for that is an easy fixture.
Well, what I don't know is, within the context of the overall property, where are the major corners of that CR that would make sense to put them in, and, I don't wanna have stone bounds in the middle of someone's backyard, but in a reasonable edge of their property where the CR intersects would be.
They've got a retaining wall, that is probably the most important one, is where that retaining wall is going on the westerly side of the site. And then at the northerly side, they have, I think they modified a walkway to comply with the conservation restriction. I would suggest those are the two important areas.
It doesn't need to be a high mountain, some sort of a monument to, that this owner and future owners know where it is. I think does make sense.
It's all about the future, I guess.
Maybe a low grade granite with the monument right on top,
of it,
so that
You can mow over.
yeah, something that that won't be ugly or anything, but it will mark.
Have we ever certified, stamp certified and engineered for a wall?
This is not structural.
Not usually.
The retaining wall?
We do have a stamp.
Well, you do.
Yeah, we do have a stamp plan for
you do.
this. Yeah.
Okay.
That's not what you were asking, though.
Is that-
You were asking
Have we
that
done it?
as built to get the, to make sure that they're outside of the CR.
Like we do a foundation.
Oh,
Okay.
foundation
So-
is built.
Okay.
Are you doing the construction layout and control for this, or are you
Yeah.
leaving it for contract? You're going to?
We'll do what they need for us, yeah.
I'm not trying to be erroneous, but you're hiring the contractor
We can get that to talk to
back that caused all this issue. So I'm not very comfortable or confident.
I understand that.
Yeah, actually, hi, this is Steve. The construction now is going to proceed with Jay, who is the pond guy. Jay was not involved in the original staking when he showed up on the property. The original conservation stakes had been removed by the general contractor who built the deck first. And so Jay was not, I think we talked about this at a prior hearing, Jay was not aware of the conservation restriction. He was only aware of the wetlands restrictions. And so we now have someone else doing the actual construction.
Yeah, I'm satisfied with that answer. What we're discussing is whether it's appropriate to put some non-intrusive monumentation at the major corners, and we're talking about two small pieces of granite down flush with the ground. That's gonna be part of the construction layout that you're talking about putting stakes in anyway. If those bounds get set in, at the end of that, giving us a certified plot plan that shows that this structure is outside of the CR is an easy enough thing
basically it's print out a plan and
Yeah,
show it to us.
and we'll have to do an as-built for the certificate of compliance anyways, so we'd pick that up.
So
Yeah,
you
I
can-
think it's easy to get.
So
Yeah.
plan on that.
Just plan on
Yeah.
doing that.
Plan on doing that.
Yep,
And
okay.
we'll make it easy for you, we'll include it in the EO and any other documents we have to,
Okay.
so that it's easily found.
Joe, why are we talking about having the granite flush with the ground? They're not gonna mow in there.
Theoretically, you can mow right up to it.
Right up to it, right, but I mean, you know.
I didn't take it as it was gonna be flush, I thought it was gonna be,
Yeah, that's what I'm.
And I left that open to
I didn't-
debate, what sort of a monument makes
Yeah.
sense.
I think that a monument that's visible, not flush with the ground.
Absolutely.
And marked and identified, I don't think there's any question, this is the most appropriate place for it right now.
Just like we would any other.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Posting.
Yeah,
Yep, okay,
yeah.
good, thanks.
Yep, at least that's my view of it, that's how I take it. And as I said, we have an enforcement order that's open till June, and we have what's in front of us now, so we can mandate it. And it doesn't sound like there's any objection anyway, so let's just make it part of the construction.
Okay.
Is there anything else we need to do with this one? That's yours, sir.
Okay.
So, it sounds like you're comfortable, you could approve the abstract modification and then amend the enforcement order with the conditions that you guys discussed.
Can I do both in one motion?
I think you can move both documents, I think that would be 100%.
I've done that just now. I moved that.
I'm anxious to see you do it again.
Okay. Consider it done twice.
Seconded it again.
All those in
And
favor
Joe,
say aye.
second.
Aye.
Opposed, and that's unanimous.
Well done, Sean, well done.
Okay, but now we need it's an
Thank you.
after-effect modification, 242-1708, 271 Stevens Street.
Good evening. For the record, John Moran from the Moran Cameron Group. We're here tonight representing Gerald Brecker for a after-the-fact modification for the property located at Lot 1, 271 Stevens Street. The commission may remember this property. Your commission issued an order of conditions back in August of 2017. An extension was granted to that order. This order will be valid till August of 29th of 2022. The original project was for the construction of an addition, a driveway, grading, installation of a wall along the 25-foot no disturb, and a 25-foot restoration area in the back of the property. When we were hired to go out and do the as-built as part of the certificate of compliance request, we found that there was a patio and a retaining wall that was built at the back of the property that was not in compliance with the original application. Because of that, we had filed this modification. And the as-built plan that you see before you, the patio and the retaining wall are located at the rear of the dwelling. The patio and the retaining wall are approximately 77 and 76 feet from the resource area, so it does comply with the 50-foot no-build. That area prior to construction was all lawn. It appears the construction of the retaining wall was just to minimize the amount of grading that was originally proposed on that side of the house. The original design plan did not show any patios or decks or anything at the rear of the structure, and obviously this patio was built. The patio is about 350 square feet in size. Approximately 260 square feet of that is in the buffer zone. If some of the commission members remember this property, the wetland is actually uphill from the proposed structure. So runoff from this patio doesn't even head to the wetland. It actually heads outside the 100-foot buffer zone. At this point, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, John. Joe?
Yeah, my recollection on this is that it was an old contractor's yard and a lot of debris kind of dumped over decades in the backyard, which kind of altered the way the water used to naturally flow through that area, but that was just an old, long existing issue. So part of the restoration was cleaning that stuff out of there and restoring it. But I think if the patio was in the walkway were to come in as part of that application, probably wouldn't have changed the outcome of our decision. Probably would have been the same answer. There was some additional flow that they were mitigating on the abutting property, which found its way down to the lower wetland, which is in a culvert that goes across and eventually gets to Stevie's Pond. But again, for single-family residences, you know, 2 small lots, it's almost like a BMP, not really precisely analyzed, just, you know, build it logically to make sure that it works. And from what I've seen in the photographs, it probably does all that. Is it just this one lot that's coming in?
Right, for now.
Do those come in under a common permit? or
They're on separate.
Separate
They're
NOIs.
separate NOIs.
2 separate NOIs, okay,
Yes.
so it's just this one that we're dealing with.
Yep.
The other one doesn't have a certificate yet,
Not
right?
yet.
Okay, I'm all set.
So, I'm just looking at the picture, so any flow that is generated from this is likely to go down the driveway?
Correct. Or to the opposite side of the house, if you're standing in the street looking at the house,
Yeah.
some of the flow will make its way around the right-hand side of the house as well.
Okay.
Not much, but some of it.
And non-jurisdictional in either case?
Correct. And actually, one of the things that they did do that was not shown on the approved plan is they actually built a drip edge along the right side of the house, which is outside the buffer, and along the back side of the house within the buffer. So that'll actually help the runoff that's coming around the house from this patio area.
Thank you. All set, Mr. Chairman.
I have no problem, but I know you engineered, so I'm not, I just, you know, I know the 25 is a 25, but why does everybody insist on going right at the 25? Because if it's wrong, you know.
Oh, yeah, we staked that wall out.
You know, even with people with foundations and stuff, I say, you know, they're right on the line. And I've been in excavation like a long time, and I know it's not an exact science.
Yep.
But that's the only thing I see. I have no problem with it. Thank you.
No questions from me?
Yeah, I'm in favor of the modification.
Want a motion?
I'd like one.
I move that we grant the modification request for 242-1708, 271 Stevens Street.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that's unanimous.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
You want to tackle?
Yeah, we'll do the COC
You
now.
want to tackle the COC
Seeing you
while we're
while you're
at it?
sitting there. Okay, 242-1708, 271 Stevens Street.
Not sure what more we can ask. I'm all
Huh?
set.
I know, I'm all set. You are-
My question goes to Amy. Are you
Yep.
satisfied with the as-built drawings?
Yes.
All set.
And,
I didn't expect anything else for an answer, but
Yes
I
or
just
no?
had
I
to
am,
ask it, you
never
know?
mind.
Everything's in compliance, yes or no?
Yes.
No questions?
Jack?
Invasives, was there a question about invasive control on the site and?
Yes, the target species have been repressed, and it's, you know, it's a couple of knotweed here and there that can be manually removed that poke up every so often, but for the most part, the planted plants are about 73% overall survivorship on that lot, with a lot of volunteer species that were just around that just kind of filled in. So it's really well vegetated.
So it's looking like
It's
what
wild.
we want is gonna take over and
Yep.
the invasive,
It's gonna take that place loaded with knotweed.
it was, I know.
Yeah.
Yeah, great.
All right,
Yeah,
no
as
more
part of,
questions.
if I could just add, as part of the COC request, we did submit, LEC had prepared a narrative with regards to that restoration area.
Yeah, they did like 2 or 3 rounds of monitoring.
Maybe you said it was 73%, not 74.
Or 74, whatever. Just shy of 75.
74.2.
All right, so we need a motion.
Move that we grant the COC request for 242-1708, 271 Stevens Street.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that's unanimous.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Just gonna run to the bedroom, just keep going.
All right, I can do that. Next one is COC for 242-1557, Mill Pond.
Alrighty.
more time for the record. Bill Hall with Civil Design Consultants, representing the Mill Pond Homeowners Association. Excuse me. So we had came before you a couple of meetings ago about 2 certificates of compliance for this. One of them was closed out. This was the one that was remaining open because there was no as-built on file. We checked with FP Riley. They did not have records on file for the as-built, just what we had provided previously with invoices for the installation of this. We went out in the field and we visually checked this trench. Riley had said that they put stone to grade. They did indeed do that down the entire length of the driveway. It's approximately 2 feet off the edge of the driveway from pavement, 2 feet back. It's all stone. And then we did measure the invert into the catch basin that's out there, and we put that on the plan. So we've just marked up the original design plan to note these, and also just that we did a visual inspection on this, that we did not go out and field locate these portions of the trench. But that's all we have.
Thank you. Joe?
I have no questions.
I know the contractor, I know he did it right. Sean?
No questions?
Jack?
That's what we asked for.
Motion?
I move that we grant the COC for 242-1557, 55-70-80 through 83 Mill Pond.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that's unanimous.
Thank you. Have a
Thank you.
good night.
Next one is 242-1797, 125 Boston Street. Request to withdraw. I have a question. I just have a question.
Yep.
It says here land is, wasn't that Willis's? Is that 125 Boston Street? Is that Willis's property?
I don't know who. Bob Landers was the contractor that flipped the house and then sold it to the Gorettis. So I don't know who owned it before
Well, I thought
Mr.
this-
Landers.
I thought this might have been the, okay, certificate of the, okay. Okay, that's fine. All right, so now we have enforcement orders. Foster Street, Hilton oil spill.
Can we go back to that discussion you just had, because our request to withdraw is on a certificate
Yeah.
request? I mean, is it not in compliance at all? Is it, they need more paperwork, is it premature?
No,
Does it
I
warrant
vi-
an enforcement action?
no. Well, I visited the site this morning and, the septic system isn't functioning correctly. So we have gray water surficially. And the design engineer did a test pit in the last 2 or 3 days, and we haven't heard back from him yet. So I, came back to the office and just informed the planning, the Board of Health.
Still
The order's
still effective, still
open.
valid, okay.
So if they need to do additional work, they'll come back to us with whatever that is.
Okay, I'm all set.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Hey, Fred.
Hi, how are you?
Good. Okay,
Nice to see you again.
okay, will we start?
Bring muffins next time.
Start with Amy.
Start with either Amy, I would, my recommendation, my humble recommendation is either start with Amy or start with GEI.
Mike, you want to start?
Mike Sabulis.
Mike Sabulis? I think you're muted.
I see things happening there.
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Hi, Mike.
Excellent. Hello, everyone.
So maybe just, you want to recap for us?
Yes, so I think most recently I did a site visit earlier this week. I think some of my initial documentation was provided to the commission. Sheens were, not observable downstream of the culvert. I did notice some residual odors in and around the culvert area. And most recently, Clean Harbors and Wood have completed, as I understand it, their investigations of the wetland area for sediment and surface water testing. Should I stop there, Amy? Do you want to get into anything else at this point, or do you want to keep going?
Just that since the last meeting, Taylor and I did a downstream walk, got to the end of Wintergreen. At Wintergreen, we weren't seeing any sheen or evidence
We're not
of.
a war.
I'm sorry.
Not. You did
Not,
not find.
no.
Okay.
And we were walking along the
In the
edges,
mud.
depressing and trying to,
High water conditions.
yeah, it was higher
High
at
water
that time,
conditions.
yes.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
One of the things that was talked about, that came out that I wanted to hear about tonight was, it was review of the raw data sampling results and 3-week look ahead.
Yes.
There appeared, based on the information that was sent out, there appears to be some discrepancies between what we mandated to be collected and analyzed and what was actually collected and analyzed. There seems to be some disparate information, at least based on the documents that were sent out, Amy, by you, on email at 1:35 p.m. And it was entitled Town Review of Raw Data Sampling Results and 3-Week Look Ahead.
Right.
So based on the information in that read, I'm interested in having all those questions asked and answered, please.
So
if I may, for the commission, I think what's important to understand, so everyone's on the same page, is 2 separate investigations have been performed. One by Clean Harbors and the Clean Harbors team can correct me where I'm inaccurate, to assess the banks and upland soils in and around the bridge and the upstream properties and immediately downstream of the culvert, and then a separate investigation by Wood to do essentially assess environmental impacts downstream of the culvert. 2 separate sets of data have been provided, one from the Wood investigation and one from the Clean Harbors investigation. As noted in the email sent earlier today to the project teams, the Wood investigation included testing for the required analytes that were outlined in the enforcement order. The Clean Harbors investigation seems to have been missing, or separate opinions are made as to the relevancy of the testing that needed to be performed. So I think that's one of the questions that's outstanding at this time.
Well, specifically, it talked about Clean Harbors only tested for EPH based on screening for total volatile organic compounds. But the amended enforcement order called for all samples of soil, groundwater, sediment, and surface to be tested at a minimum, EPH and target analysis of EPH and target analysis. Based on these requirements, the question is being asked by someone, not me. Based on these requirements, why was the change to the sampling protocol not discussed with the town prior to the testing being performed? And there is that continues on. I'm not going to read it verbatim, but there were a bunch of questions that were sent out. I am interested in hearing them answered by someone. I get the impression from the document that I'm reading that Clean Harbors did not comply completely with the amended enforcement order that was generated at the last meeting. That's my question. That's based on the information I'm reading right here. So, are you not aware of that, or?
No, that is exactly what our, email this.
Okay, so that's why, let's get to the meat of this thing. Why, if that's the case, what happened? Where's the breakdown? Is Clean Harbors not complying with the enforcement order? If they're not, let's knock that thing off right now.
Right.
I don't want to spend an hour dancing around this thing.
Right.
Can anybody answer that question for me? Anyone?
Mike, you want to try that?
Sure. So based on, I'm not sure, are there representatives from Clean Harbors on this?
No, I just emailed Alan asking if he was going to join us.
Yeah, Mike, I'm not gonna ask you to answer on their behalf, but I wanna make sure
I'm
that
not-
I'm clear. So I look at the environmental team on the, the people that are before us as a team. Wood did some things and Clean Harbors did some things, but collectively, did we cover all of the areas in question And did we get all of the things looked at and analyzed in all of those areas? It doesn't really matter who did what, but if collectively we've sampled everything we should have and got all of the answers that we asked for, the team, I think, may have met that threshold. And if that, as a team, they didn't meet that threshold, then Al's point is correct. Somewhere between the sampling protocol, something was missed. So that's, I think, really the question. Collectively, everything we asked for in all of the areas that we asked for it, have we received that?
We have to date received the raw data. What we are currently waiting on, and it is due date is upcoming this Friday, is the summation of those investigations and the findings and opinions. So it's still in process.
And the other thing that's missing is the VPH testing that was in the enforcement order. And now Alan Walker is on the call with us, so Alan, we're discussing the email that went out this afternoon. I don't know if you have any comments or responses. You may be muted.
Sorry about that, my mouse went missing.
Okay, thanks.
What's the question again?
So, I don't know if you can respond to the email that went out this afternoon, based on GEI's and the town's review of the raw data and the 3-week look ahead.
Oh, and I guess I'll say that I apologize. With notifying you prior to submitting the results, submitting the samples for analysis, and discussing about the EPH analysis. I just frankly forgot about that, and I was looking at the data and looking back at the other data collected. And, it's my opinion that the VPH is not a significant issue at that site. There's only really been pretty much a detection of it in the immediate source area, which is in the location where it initially released and just downstream of the bridge of the road crossing of the brook. And I referenced the what they call the EPH-VPH guidance document with regarding to the sampling, and I should have provided that with you prior to making that call on my own, but we had the samples. They were being picked up shortly, and I chose to just do the pH analysis because, in my opinion, that was what is most relevant for the situation.
Alan, this is Al Manzi. I'm the one that's raising this question. You got the email from Amy that talked about the 3-week look ahead, and it had the questions in it pertaining to the different testing protocols. Did you receive that at all and read it?
Yes.
And you have a copy of the enforcement order, which requires the various testing protocols that we're talking about, correct?
Yes.
And so I appreciate your candid, honest answer. You're just telling me that you made a call to do it your way instead of what we asked on the enforcement order. Would that be fair?
I guess that'd be fair, yes.
All right, thank you. I don't have any other questions of this man.
Who does he represent?
He's the LSP. He's the LSP on the site, working for the Mr. Hilton and Clean Harbors. He's the LSP. He's the guy in charge.
Well, my question is that this has been going on since January 22nd. This isn't the Exxon Valdez spill here. We're looking at 200 gallons of diesel heat fuel estimated that
Less than
was
that.
spilled.
I think less than that.
and this one does a test, you do a test, what's the name, the test? Why can't we coordinate stuff and get this thing over with? Is there still potential oil damaging the wetlands, or it's just a paper shuffle?
You're asking him that question?
Yeah, I'm asking.
What do you think you're gonna get for an answer? He just told you he just told you he didn't comply with the enforcement order because he didn't think it was relevant. What do you think he's gonna tell you?
Well, he must have saw the papers that he considered it wasn't relevant.
He already gave a very honest answer, and I thanked him for it. He said that he received the enforcement order with the protocols that we required, and he chose not to do it. That's as clear and as honest an answer as you can ever hope to get.
I wouldn't say it was flagrantly as that. It was more that I was trying to get the samples done and I frankly forgot about that aspect of going back and running it through and waiting for that time to get a decision on that, on submitting the analysis with that change that I made.
So look, going forward, Alan, the enforcement order remains in effect, and the requirements and the protocols that we outline on the enforcement order remain. They didn't expire. So it would be, I think, prudent on your part to comply with the enforcement order. Don't you think?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, you forgot whatever, it doesn't matter. The thing of it is the commission's been held in the lurch since the end of January. This poor guy, businessman, has been sitting here trying to be totally compliant. And he's hiring professionals, and it's not being done. And I think you and our guy should get together and resolve this issue. Amy just said that she didn't see anything downstream. We should get this resolved.
Well, Lou, in defense of our team, we have, our people are out there. Taylor and Amy and Mike Sabulis are out there doing their job on behalf of the town. We're doing our diligence. Our people are on the scene and are working with Clean Harbors. This enforcement order was not a secret. It wasn't a sneak attack. This was all part of something that everybody knew was coming anyway. It was discussed at the last meeting openly in public. There was active participation, and there has been active participation for the most part. There has been, this is the first time that we've had this type of non-compliance, but this has been a tug of war going. I think asking the sides to get together and sing Kumbaya, we're past that. What we need is articulable results, scientific results in the field that we've requested through our staff and through our consultant. The requests have been made to Clean Harbors saying, this is what we want you to do. And that request is based on site visits and field analysis, and we have our commission expert. You could put them in the same room and put everybody from Clean Harbors in the same room and have them sit down and talk about it. It's not going to get it done. There needs to be a little higher level of compliance on their side, I think. It's my own personal opinion. I think that they could work a little harder, and I think that yes, at some point it will be fixed. But the damage that's been done in the interim is quite possibly irreparable for years to come. This stuff isn't. You're not getting it all out of there, but you can do the best you can.
Yeah, you're not going to get it all.
Well, but we're not also going to pull up stakes and say, okay, we've done the best we can. We would like to have science drive the project, and we have Mike Sabulis helping us do that, and we have Amy and Taylor helping us do that. So that's where the enforcement order came from. That was the genesis of the enforcement order.
Mike, can I ask you a question?
Absolutely, sir.
How far, in your professional opinion, how far are we away from what what we were requiring, what we are requiring? How far
I
away?
think they're, sorry, go ahead.
How far away are we from resolving this situation?
I think the investigation report and opinions that are going to be generated by Clean Harbors and Wood that's due, I believe, this Friday will be dictating what the next path looks like and their recommendations for the Commission's consideration.
So with the void.
So we should be getting a lot of answers on Friday is what I'm getting to.
So with the void in sampling and analysis of those samples, what we're anticipating on Friday, would we be getting an incomplete product, or would we be getting something submitted as a preliminary product to give us a particular guide, but we should withhold that final step until we get that final element of the sampling that was missed? That's what I'm not getting a good handle on. You know, do we send them out and do samples like comply with the enforcement, or go take additional samples, go get them analyzed, and put them into your final report, which is going to forecast what it is you're going to be doing out here? Because if it's not necessary, tell us, and if it was appropriate then, and it wasn't challenged then, and it was simply missed, do we still feel strongly that it should be part of the sampling protocol? And if it is, we should be just very clear and go out and get some more samples and analyze them, and include them into your final report.
Thank you.
So, short way to say it is the lack of Clean Harbors, including VPH in their results, is it fatal to the product that we expect on Friday?
Amy, you're asking me that question?
Yeah.
I don't suspect so, and it'll be incumbent upon Clean Harbors and Wood to provide their opinions and see how their data sets overlap to see if the question is, I guess I won't know until I see their data sets in whole and their opinions. Yeah. So I can't provide you an answer at this time.
Okay.
So what I'm hearing is we're going to get something on Friday. We're going to assess it for what it is, and it may be voids additional information that we need in order to make that a final report. But you're willing to say between now and Friday to let's run with what we have and assess the results of that preliminary report on Friday. Excuse me.
Correct.
So I think from this table, we need to say tonight, and if there is a void, they should not wait until the next meeting to hear from us to go out and get additional samples. They should be planning on getting additional samples. I would hope they do that regardless of what the report looks like on Friday. They might want to be out there tomorrow resampling in anticipation of us asking for it anyway.
For next meeting, we should have the definite answers, instead of keep next meeting. I'm not saying you, the other, what's the other guy's name? Alan.
I'm not willing to say that. I'm unwilling to say, well, okay, you didn't analyze everything we asked for, but we'll just go with what you got. I'm not willing to do that. What I'm saying is comply with the enforcement order. Because if we don't get compliance with the enforcement orders that we issue, then we should stop issuing enforcement orders. Either we get compliance or we don't. If we don't get compliance, we got to start levying fines and taking other actions to get compliance. If this was anything else, you guys would be pounding on the table right now for a cease and desist or whatever. If it was any other project.
I'm in agreement with you. I just want to have stuff ready for us by the next meeting.
It's not possible. The next meeting is not going to have all the data that we requested. That's the data we requested, and the stuff that a lot of stuff that we asked for is going to be absent from the report. And we're putting Mike in a bad spot by asking him if we're going to get the product we want. We're not.
Well, could we get it in 2 weeks? No, Mike.
If we were to require VPH testing, how fast could we get those results? I guess that's the question.
Could I speak to that? You know, the DEP has provided specific guidance with regards to sampling for EPH and VPH analysis. And at this point in time, the VPH analysis is a more volatile component, and it really has been minimal impacts at this point. It has been picked up in the surface water, which it was sampled for, and immediately downstream of the road crossing of the brook. That has been pretty much it for the VPH analysis. And that's why I referred to the guidance documents, which it indicates for the soil sample that there are different criteria or recommendations in that guidance document when you are to implement the VPH analysis, because it may not be relevant. And we followed that guidance. And I would stand by that on that. And then we fully anticipate providing you the report come Friday and submit that to you. And that, I think, is going to be quite helpful for Mike as well.
Al, do you have a copy of the enforcement order?
He already-
Yeah, you got it?
Yeah, he answered that.
Oh, you did answer it?
Yeah, he answered that earlier. He
Okay.
acknowledged that he has it.
So in 2 weeks, the next meeting, if the test results that you're waiting for on Friday, should it be, will it comply with the enforcement order?
No, we're out of compliance until,
No, he's out of
I mean, we're
compliance right now.
technically out of compliance until we get VPH testing. It's up to the commission if you
But
want to
again, Bill-
forgive that.
But again,
But-
I can hear what he's saying. He's saying that the DEP guidance doesn't require it. So in his opinion, he has no intention of doing it because he's got a document from DEP that says, well, you don't really have to. So are we going to let DEP run this, or are we
No.
running this?
No.
If we're running it, I move right now that we assess fines of $100 a day retroactive back to the issuance of the enforcement order. You have a motion and a second, Mr. Chairman.
Is that, period, or moving forward
Running
until?
retroactive back to the issuance of the enforcement order and going forward until the enforcement order is complied with to the letter.
Who does it go to? You went up to this guy?
It's going to Clean Harbors.
No, go to the responsible party.
It goes to
Whoever the responsible party is. Guys, I'm telling you, if they're working for you, you should fire them. My motion stands.
It was second. All right.
Already seconded.
Sean did.
Just for comment, and I've been holding my tongue.
It hasn't made its way down here yet.
Yeah.
That's true.
It hasn't.
I'm sorry, my apologies.
Good, if you,
Yeah, I mean, I think I've been fed up with this for months, and I said earlier on, who's your supervisor? Because I just knew we were going to be doing this with him at this point. So I've been willing to do whatever mechanisms we can to try to get compliance with what we're looking for and to get this thing cleaned up.
The
So
only thing we have left is to run fines. That's all we have left.
unless we have replacement power, unless we have we don't have the power to replace Clean Harbors or this specific LSP with another person. So we have no choice but to, fine.
What I would contribute to this conversation is that there's regulations and there's guidance, and there's various agencies who don't always agree. And the path of least resistance is to simply take the most restrictive of all of those and follow that course. Whether you think we needed to do that particular sampling and analysis because you thought you may have not needed to because of the guidance, do it because we asked for it.
Because you ordered to.
Bad decision to not do. Now, you're going on the science, you're going on the regulation, you work with DEP on a regular basis. You've got a level of comfort that if you got into a long, drawn-out fight and battle and might go to court, you might win. But isn't the easier thing to do, sample it and analyze it and just be done with it and not fight about it? That's what I think we have here, is we have a clash between an LSP who's more comfortable with working with DEP, and I'm not even going to say more comfortable, they are comfortable with working with DEP, and not at all comfortable with working with us, who really, we're not environmental hazardous material people. We're environmental folks from a wetlands perspective. We surround ourselves with experts. We hire experts when they're needed. If our third-party reviewer, having done diligence and looked at the situation and said, Conservation Commission, we want you to do these things, we're going to make those things be done. The time to have debated whether it was appropriate or not, and the guidance suggested you didn't need to or not, was back before we memorialized that in the enforcement order. They had all those things ahead of time. They had an opportunity to review those. They had an opportunity to contest those and say, we don't think we need to do it because. Heard none of it. What I heard was two things tonight. Oops, I forgot to sample, but good thing that I did because I'm relying on the guidance that says I didn't need to anyway. From the DEP perspective, I think the path of least resistance is just get the damn samples taken and analyze them and move on. And until they do that, they're just simply not in compliance. Not so much thinking fines the motivator, but I'm thinking at this point, maybe it's the only motivator. But I mean, it really boils down to that. We've been dealing with this sampling and analysis question for a month, over a month.
Yeah, 3 weeks ago when we had our meeting and discussed this case, we reviewed a remediation plan. I'll call it that. It's not the words, but it was a remediation plan from Clean Harbors and an action plan for the next 3 weeks. We had our third-party LSP. We're not LSPs here. So you're right, Joe, we're environmental people, but we hired an LSP to review it. He reviewed it, made specific recommendations, one of which is sampling for VPH. That was among many other recommendations. We felt that the original plan by Clean Harbors was very weak at best, inadequate at worst, and we favored the recommendations from our hired LSP, and that's what made it into the enforcement order. It made it into the enforcement order for a very good reason, because that's what we were told was, good for this project. So we decided to do this, not arbitrarily, but for a very good reason, and based on some pretty good advice from our technical experts. Now we're finding that it's just not being followed. Al, I completely agree with your motion and all the seconds. I think it's totally in bounds for us to do that.
I have one question as far as, who do we give the fine to? The applicant, or the violator, or the contractor he hired? Actually, it's the insurance company that hired him, right?
See,
We hired him directly, and then, insurance, we have going through insurance, but.
Right. So you understand what's going on?
Oh,
here?
yeah, absolutely, yep.
Okay.
And I apologize if the fine goes directly to you, but if it does, they're working for you?
No, I understand where you're going.
Thank you.
Yep, absolutely.
All right, so we got a motion and a second. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? And that's unanimous. So, all right, so now, what direction we're gonna go with telling him which way he's gonna go?
Alan's been told very directly to comply with the order. Mr. Hilton hears us loud and clear. The message will be delivered, and the fines are retroactive back to the date of the issuance of the enforcement order and running until it's in compliance. So that's all we can do right now, Mr. Chair.
Okay.
If I may I ask Mike his opinion about conducting VPH analysis at this point in time with regards to the soil samples I collected?
That's a question for Mike.
That would be
Happy to answer it.
Okay, go ahead.
Sure. So this is an interesting case where the purpose of the investigation was to assess impacts to the resource area as well as human health and ecological risk. I'm very familiar with the EPH VPH guidance, having used it and relied upon it myself. In this case, we are unfortunately in the fun, fuzzy gray piece of that guidance. since we're dealing with not only with soils but with sediment, and the MCP is mainly designed to handle soil and groundwater, with sediment living in the ecological world. With respect to this opinion for BPH testing, from my opinion, the field screening, while very helpful in determining whether or not BPH was necessary, I would have also tested for the BPH, if for no other reason to validate my non-detects that are picked up in the field screening due to issues you may have in the field screening process. But that would be my opinion for how to proceed, how I would have proceeded, and in all deference.
And I'd also just like to point out that in our surface water and sediment sampling, we did conduct all that VPH sampling, and it really was not a significant contaminant associated with the release. And that was part of my judgment in making the call to just do the EPH analysis and trying to think of some cost controls as well. But I felt that based on the field screening we had, because it was well below the requirements of the guidance document, to just proceed with the EPH analysis, because that is what has been proposed and implemented by the DEP with regards to it. And that's why there's specific guidance on how to implement sampling plans.
Okay, well, I think you have our response, and you have the opinion of Mr. Saboulis, our consultant. So that's where it stands right now, sir. We're going to continue this for 2 weeks, and you should be getting into compliance with that enforcement order. It's costing either you or your client $100 a day, retroactive back to the date of the issuance of the enforcement order. Accordingly, I move to continue for 2 weeks.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? That's unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Raleigh tab, we don't have to do, correct?
You did it before, right?
No, it was under the RDA.
Yeah, we did it.
All right, but there's an enforcement order here.
Yeah, Amy, did we do the enforcement order?
We dealt with them simultaneously.
Oh, okay. All right, so next one is 40 Flagship Drive. Right, she's talking to her boyfriend.
So under 40 Flagship Drive, Mr. Chairman, in order to expedite the process here,
So can I just?
Amy wants us to consider something. Go
Just a
ahead.
quick update on my conversation with our town council this afternoon.
Oh, good, good.
Her recommendation is that we can issue an enforcement order to require this, but that we ask the applicant for all of the material that they have in their possession right now relative to the notice of intent, all evidence and documentation of any correspondence that he has had with the downstream abutters that actually own the wetland that's impacted, so that we understand, what's been going on back and forth. Assemble all of that and provide it to the downstream owners, asking them to attend the next meeting to discuss this, because she agreed that we can't force Bill Linsky to get a signature on a notice of intent. It's a sort of an impossible thing that we're requiring of him to do work on private property.
And what
and
private?
require
We're not asking him to
sign
get a
on.
signature.
But that's.
His only thing he needs to do is file an NOI.
Yes, but
If
the
he
work.
can't, so at some point in time, we can relax the deadline or relax the continuation of fines as of a certain date in recognition that he's done everything he could in his power. But I would not remove the ability, his requirement to file an NOI regardless.
Oh, no, I wouldn't do that.
He still has to do it
Oh,
on
no,
his.
yes, but in terms of coming to the realization that he is gonna have to do physical work on someone else's property, and if it's part of the NOI, the property owner has to sign
I have a
that
credibility,
NOI.
not with you by any means. I don't believe Linsky as far as I can throw.
Same here.
Do we even know he's even approached these people formally or informally?
No, and that's
We
what
need to,
we're
we need to
try-
do that.
that's
We
what
need to
we're-
do some forensic
that's
work. and-
what
They wouldn't let you on the property.
I'm sorry?
I thought you went there, they wouldn't let you on the property.
On the abutter?
Oh, well, with the snow and the ice, his site guy didn't want us to be walking around.
We're talking about the construction
Yeah,
site
the
or the abutment?
construction
The
site.
construction.
No, we're talking about the abutter.
No, the abutter.
No.
We have no idea if they even know
No.
this happened.
So they've gotten permission to delineate the wetlands and do the survey,
Okay.
but that's as far as it's gotten.
Keep the
And-
fines wrong.
My suggestion
All right,
was,
but I would suggest issuing an enforcement order requiring Bill to provide all of that information to us.
Well, we're asking them to file a notice of intent.
I know,
And we're
but,
saying you're paying us $100 a day until you file the notice of intent. We're gonna get that
I mean,
information.
this becomes an investigation at this point. I'm not gonna talk about it with cameras running, but we'll talk offline.
But we're gonna get that
Okay.
information.
We're gonna be able to determine just how genuine his efforts have been to get that signature. And in the meantime, the fines can continue. to
Okay,
run.
so you don't wanna.
I respectfully disagree,
Okay,
most
It was
respectfully. And
just-
I understand,
that's all right.
100% I understand. I
I'm
just,
just trying to,
and I
try to get away
appreciate you.
from this
I
crowd.
appreciate you and the effort you just made, but I think that
It's okay.
this is just like the case we just
Status.
had. There's a credibility problem.
Okay.
Anyway, okay.
Status quo,
my
so no-
suggestion was to make them file the NOI minus the enforcement order, and issue an enforcement order to the abutter.
Maybe eventually, but we have more work to do.
No, because
I don't believe, I'm not convinced the abutting landowner is the obstacle in this NOI moving forward.
Nor am I.
Not convinced.
Nor am I.
No, so that's why I'm saying, let them file the NOI, but keep the enforcement order. But also issue an enforcement order to the other person.
I don't want him to I don't want to issue a half-assed enforcement order, because I think at that point, he would have satisfied his enforcement
Right,
order.
right.
I think in the meantime, let's find out whether this is true or not, and get a full NOI for all of the work, including the abutting property.
I think if we got an enforcement, gave an enforcement order to the abutter, we get their attention.
We don't want,
Maybe eventually, but I don't think we're there yet.
it's not their fault.
Well, if it's not, then we just rescind the enforcement order.
We just, no, we keep the gas pedal on the correct
Okay.
target.
Yeah,
We stay on
All right,
target.
okay.
I'm gonna ride that horse
So,
till it's dead. I'm
no
not gonna
action.
start switching onto a fresh horse and
So,
run through
no
another
action.
course.
Same here.
right? So no action.
All right, so we,
Historic moment, Joe, I'm with you.
all right, so
Write this down.
All right, so we'll just continue to the 27th with no action.
So moved.
Second.
all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, that's unanimous. General business, we designated conservation.
Yeah,
We have to vote,
We have to do what now?
We do.
it's a,
Voting to
for
designate
representative for
a
CPC.
representative
It
to
is-
CPC.
and-
Say it again?
We need to vote to designate a representative
Nominate
to
Deb again.
CPC.
No, we're gonna send the new guy. We got a new guy
No,
coming on.
Jack wants to still do
Oh,
it.
that's me.
Oh, I'm sorry, you wanna keep?
I'll do it.
Oh, okay.
I'm sorry.
I was under the impression that we were doing this because nobody wanted it.
No,
I had-
no.
We had this all settled a month ago.
I know.
Just let everybody in formation take a step back.
Because I got an email from the,
I moved
I
that we-
second the motion for the new guy.
No, that's terrible.
I nominate,
I nominate Mayday
Don't
Maven.
scare him away yet.
All right, I withdraw my second. I second
All right,
Mayday
so-
Maven.
All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, that's
Thank you,
it.
Jack.
See, when you
Thank you,
volunteer,
Jack.
we don't want you,
All
Jack.
right.
Hi, Lou. Yeah, we done?
Okay,
No,
so I
no,
think
we're not
that's
done.
it. That's it.
No, we're
That's
not.
all we have.
Oh, yeah. Motion, we just have some
Motion to
discussion.
adjourn.
Second.
Yeah.
Okay,